Welcome everyone. Really important day for us today. We're now going to start taking oral evidence as part of our consultation or our scrutiny of the inquiry and redress bill. So just to remind you all that we are being broadcast online and throughout Parliament buildings, and I would welcome those people who are watching online today. Okay, so if you can ensure your mobile phones are muted, and just to remind you that there's no recording or photography of the meeting allowed. Okay, members, we are starting a little bit early today because we have a lot of business to get through, and members will arrive. But apart from that, I don't think we have any actual apologies.
No apologies,
okay,
Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so any declarations of interest to declare? Okay, thank you. Okay, so chairperson's business, just to highlight that we had our online familiarisation session earlier, it was actually last Thursday via Microsoft Teams. And this was the third of a series of 3, and across all 3 sessions we've had 90 individuals attended, and I would just like to place on record my thanks to the clerk and his team for tremendous effort, and the engagement team here at the Assembly for getting everything set up, and for our external partners as well in terms of facilitating a lot of those sessions. I suppose this is an opportune moment for us as a committee to send a message out to those watching that if they haven't yet made a submission through the Assembly's system, I think we'll maybe come on to that in terms of technicalities that we would encourage them to do that, because we want to hear from everybody. So draft minutes, members, just to refer you to pages 16 to 14 of your pack. These are from our meeting on the 10th of September. I'm just wondering if people are content that these are a true reflection of the proceedings.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and sign them. Okay, members, will I go to matters arising?
Yes, I think so.
And then we'll go to correspondence. Okay, so matters arising. So 5.1, call for evidence, just a summary to date. So you'll find the clerk's brief on pages 17 to 19 of the pack, and then pages 20 to 49 of the pack for a response to committee correspondence of the 14th of June meeting with departmental officials in relation to our queries about the bill. And then on pages 50 to 214 of the pack, you'll find a copy of the consultation responses to date. Pages 3 to 25 of the table pack, you'll find a copy of the list of publications where a letter from the Chair was published, and the international media list where the consultation has been advertised. So I'm going to ask the clerk to provide a summary of the call for evidence to date. Thank you,
Chair. Members, this is page 17 of your committee pack. And I won't take, this is something that we were due to do last week, but just ran out of time, and I won't take up a huge amount of time on this, but just to go through a number of the emerging themes that have come from the responses to the call for evidence today. Just as a reminder, the call for evidence was launched on the 7th of July, so just as we went into summer recess, and is due to remain open until the end of September, the 29th of September. We have now had the stats from this paper, which was last week, have moved on a little bit. We've now had 20 online responses, and I think there have been 10 or 11 written responses. So still quite small numbers. I think that we will be due quite a number of responses in the next couple of weeks. These ones have nearly all been from individuals, and I know that there will be groups and more organised groups who will be responding, but obviously that hasn't happened yet. I think summer recess has also had summer holidays has had an impact on that. But of the responses that we have had, there are some clear themes that have come out, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of those to you now, because it might actually inform questions that you may want to ask to the people who are in front of the committee today. I won't go through all of them, but just again on page 17 at the beginning of the table there, clause 1.4, which is the period to be covered by the bill, the majority of respondents do agree with the time frame of 1922 to 1995. Just to remind members, 1922, the reason for that is the formation of the state, basically. 1995 was when the last of the prescribed institutions closed. Some respondents have suggested it be extended to the year 2000, but I have to say that isn't the majority view.
Clerk, are we able to ask you now for some of the rationale? Because I have a query about that. As, for example, why did some people suggest 2000 whenever? Is this the right time for us to ask you those questions, or will we maybe just...
If you can ask me, but I'm not sure I can give you the answer.
Okay, let you keep going.
So yes, this is more really just a summary of the themes. We'll get into the actual detail of it as we move forward. That's fine. So clause 2.2, which is systemic failings. The majority of respondents are seeking a fuller definition of what systemic failings means, which I can completely understand. Members may want to consider or not whether that's something that should be in the bill or whether that's actually for the inquiry itself to define. So I will leave that there. Clause 3 is an important one. Guidelines, some respondents have suggested that guidelines need to be published when looking at the definition of prescribed institutions. Members will recall that the bill does allow either the inquiry chair or TEO via FMDFM to add to or remove from the list of institutions that are to be looked at by the inquiry. And currently the bill is silent on how that process or the decisions around that would take place. So some respondents have suggested that there should be guidelines around that. Again, whether that should be actually on the face of the bill or more coming out of the terms of reference for the inquiry is something committee can look at. Clause 31 is, as I'm sure you're all aware, probably the most contentious clause of the bill, and certainly the responses to the call for evidence have suggested that. So all individual respondents that we have had so far all disagree with the current posthumous date. There are different dates being suggested by different individuals. There isn't a consensus on a date, and that isn't really a surprise. However, there is full consensus that the current posthumous date should not be in the bill. And again, all individual respondents to date have suggested that the initial £10,000 standard payment is not sufficient. And again, there are different suggestions, but a range of between 12,500 and 15,000 is where people appear to be settling who have responded to the consultation. And again, finally, not all respondents, but a majority of individual respondents also suggest that the £2,000 proposed payment to relatives is not sufficient. However, there isn't an emerging trend as to what that should be. I think I won't go through any of the other ones because they are I think less important in terms of the actual inquiry now, apart from clause...
There's one that I maybe interrupted you.
Yes,
you missed.
that's okay.
If you go back one page, I think.
Yes, okay.
That one at the bottom.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes, okay. Clause 2C, which is around placement of children and then in inverted commas in the care of. A number of respondents, not all of them, have suggested that this clause should actually be expanded to include those children who were in care settings, care placements, fostering settings and placements, or children's homes placements later in life. That would be a big inclusion to the bill and would really change the scope of the bill quite considerably. But certainly we are seeing a theme that people would wish for that to be expanded. And then finally, and just briefly, Chair, clause 35, power to require further information. Many respondents suggested that the inquiry should be given every power available to compel records and evidence as required.
Okay. Can I just ask for a wee bit of clarification regarding that clause 2C? Did you say the majority of the respondents were in disagreement with or wanted it expanded? Or sorry, what?
Just a number of
a
respondents.
Number of, but it wasn't.
Not a majority.
Right.
No.
Okay.
But because it alters the scope of the bill quite considerably, I wanted to mention that one to you. But no, it isn't. It isn't a majority of respondents.
Okay, sorry.
And then finally, Chair, clause 42, which is in relation to regulations, and this is to do with appointing advisors who would advise on the redress payment scheme. All respondents agreed that there should be the use of appointed advisors for that, and then some respondents went further and wished to see in the bill a commitment to transparency in selecting such advisors. So that's a gallop through the evidence that we've had to date.
Okay, well, thank you for that summary. I suppose that also set the tone and some food for thought when we actually go to the sessions. Well,
We'll move on to
Sorry.
correspondence.
Okay,
Yes.
just to pick up on that point then, so I wonder, can we seek agreement for the committee team to liaise with the Assembly Engagement and Comms colleagues for a final push to raise awareness of the call for evidence before the closing date at the end of September? Are people in agreement with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so shall we take 5 minutes?
I think if we get through the
Let's
through the
go to
correspondence.
correspondence. Okay, welcome Timothy, thank you for joining us. So we are going, what page am I going to?
You'll be going to
Page 92.
sorry.
27 to 49, the table pack.
Okay, so members, we're going to jump ahead in the agenda just while others join the meeting and pick up on the correspondence. You'll recall we didn't get through it all last week. Okay, so I'm going to jump to, is it 10?
Yeah, so if you just open that, there we go, that one there. So
Okay.
6.
Okay, so members, so if I would take you to pages 27 to 49 of your table pack for a summary of committee correspondence, I'm just going to draw your attention to a number of matters. 10.6, the response from TO regarding the Northern Ireland Fiscal Bill. You'll find information on this on pages 524 and 525 of the pack, and just to advise the committee has received a response from TO to the committee's correspondence on the 10th of July 2025 regarding the Northern Ireland Fiscal Bill. Just to advise that there are no anticipated implications for TO as a result of this bill, and I would seek your agreement to note this item of correspondence and seek your agreement to write to the Committee for Finance outlining the committee's view. Are we in agreement? Okay, 10.7, TO, independent review of the historical institutional abuse redress process. So refer you to pages 526 to 533 of the meeting pack. And just to advise that the committee has received correspondence from TO regarding the independent review of the historical institutional abuse redress process, supporting justice report and key agencies action plan. Just to advise that officials have offered to brief the committee in closed session, and to advise that if any member wishes to discuss the contents of this correspondence, that we will need to go into closed session. Has anyone got anything to raise at this point in relation to that item of correspondence? No. Okay, in that case, I'm asking you to note it, seek your agreement for the committee team to liaise with the DALO to schedule an oral briefing in closed session at a future date. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, 10.8, TO, update on the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls programme. So we'll refer you to pages 534 to 546 of the meeting pack. And just to advise that the committee has received this correspondence from TO providing an update on the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls programme, and just to advise that the delivery phase of the programme has been operational since December 2024, and this paper highlights early progress in the first 6 months of delivery against the targets in the first delivery plan. And just to remind you that the committee wrote to the department on the 12th of September requesting further information on the recently commissioned research in relation to ending violence against women and girls, including the timescale, author, costs and related details. The committee also wrote to ask what specific activities, including timescales on delivery, are being funded by the local change fund within council areas across Northern Ireland, and I'm asking you to note this item of correspondence pending the oral briefing with officials at our meeting on the 19th of November to discuss the framework and the first delivery plan. Agreed? Okay. 10.10, committee evidence for economy in relation to insolvency amendment bill and the call for evidence. So I'm going to refer you to pages 549 to 553 of the meeting pack. And just to advise the committee has received this correspondence from the Economy Committee regarding the insolvency brackets amendment bill, call for evidence, and asking you to note this item of correspondence and agree to write to the department to ask whether the department has any views or comments on the bill and whether there are any implications or any rule for TO arising from the bill. Agreed? Agreed. Okay. Just stop me when you want me to move on back to the agenda. Okay. 10.12, Finance Committee, the Department of Finance Budget 2026 to 2029/30 information gathering. So I'm going to refer you to pages 567 to 582 of the meeting package. Just to advise the committee has received this correspondence from the Finance Committee in relation to the budget 2026 to 2029/30 information gathering. And just to advise that this correspondence formally commissions returns from departments to inform the Executive's consideration of budget 2026 to 29/30 that will set resource budgets for 2026 to 27 to 2028 to 2029 and budget and capital budgets for 2026 to 27 to 2029 to 2030. This will be the Executive's first multi-year budget in over 10 years. It is anticipated that a draft budget will be published in the autumn, followed by a 12-week consultation which will allow the final budget to be agreed before the start of the financial year. So members, I'm asking you to note this item of correspondence and agree to write to the department to request that a copy of the proposed budgets completed by TO are sent to the committee upon the known outcome from the Department of Finance. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Okay.
Our first witness isn't due up until 5:15,
okay,
so we have time to
okay,
go
thank
through
you.
these.
Okay, 10.13, TO written ministerial statement on the restoration of the civic forum. I'm going to refer members to pages 583 to 586 of the pack, and just to advise that the First Minister and Deputy First Minister made a written ministerial statement on the 4th of July regarding the restoration of the Civic Forum. As required under the Northern Ireland Act, FM and FM will bring the proposed arrangements for seeking the views of the forum to the Assembly for approval later this year, and at that stage will provide further detail concerning our proposed specification for the membership and the operation of the reconstituted Civic Forum. So I'm asking you to note this item of correspondence and agree to write to the Department asking whether the committee will be briefed on the proposed arrangements. Okay, thank you. 10.6, I'm going to refer you to pages 592 of your pack, and this is to advise that the committee has received correspondence from the Finance Committee regarding the legislative consent motion tracker, and just to advise that DOF has informed the Finance Committee that it plans to develop a legislative consent motion tracker for UK government bills that are relevant to it, which will be similar to the LCM tracker within TO, which will allow these processes to be monitored at the centre, and I would ask members to note this item of correspondence and agree to write to the Department and ask if there is an LCM tracker used by TO, and if not, to request an update on the current plans to implement such a tracker. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. 10.22, I'm going to refer you to pages 808 to 809 of your pack, and just to advise the committee has received a response from TO in relation to members requesting sight of the full final report compiled by Professor Alexis J, following her recent review of COSICA. Ministers have not yet decided whether the role of the Commissioner should be widened and are therefore still considering the relevant sections of the report. So just to advise that the ongoing work and consideration of the report, Ministers have asked officials to offer an oral briefing to the committee on the report in closed session, if that would be helpful. And just to note, this item of correspondence, I'm asking you to note this item of correspondence and agree to the committee team to liaise with the DALO to agree a date for an oral briefing in closed session to the committee. Just to remind that the committee will also receive an oral briefing from the Commissioner at its meeting on the 19th of November. Any thoughts on that? No.
Agreed.
I'm just wondering, is there a reason why it has to be in closed session, or can we...
Yes, only because the Ministers and therefore Department have not made final public decisions, so therefore they have offered to brief the committee, but at that point that would have to be confidential briefing. Okay,
and I'm just conscious that there is a school of thought, or there's a way in which this Commissioner's office role could be expanded to take account of the bill in front of us at the minute, and that's why. Yes. Okay, I'll move on. 10.30, so I'm going to refer you to pages 1121 to 1123 of your pack, and just to advise the committee has received a response from TO regarding regional government headquarters and its future use. Just to advise that a working group comprising the Historic Environment Division, TO Civil Contingencies and the Department of Finance Property Services Division met in late July to consider matters including the need for scheduled monument consent, the engagement of experts, a schedule of works, a business case and costings, with a view to securing assurances that any future proposed works will be comprehensive and will meet the overall objective of making the premises safe. Just asking you to note this correspondence and agree to write the Department to request an update on the project following the working group meeting over the summer. Agreed? Okay. 10.31, so we'll refer you to pages 1073 to 1076 of your pack, and just to advise the committee has received a response from TO in relation to common frameworks. Just to advise that one common framework, that is hazardous substances planning, is fully implemented, and 19 have been scrutinised by all legislatures, of which 8 are at the finalisation stage, with officials preparing submissions seeking ministerial sign-off. A further 8 have been provisionally published and are currently in the scrutiny and review stage in order to obtain agreement of the content from all relevant governments. 4 remain at the earlier stage of development. A revised delivery programme schedule is being developed by the Common Frameworks Project Board to ensure programme delivery. Just ask you to note this piece of correspondence and agree to write the Department to request that the committee has sent a copy of the revised delivery programme schedule when it has been completed by the Common Frameworks Project Board. Agreed? Okay. Okay, 10.32, I'm going to refer you to pages 1077 to 1083, and just to advise members that the committee has received a response from TO in relation to the June monitoring round, and advise that this item of correspondence should be noted and agree to write to the Department to request that they keep the committee informed of any developments and decisions relating to the Central Good Relations Fund following ministerial consideration. Agreed? Okay, 10.42, refer you to pages 1158 to 1160 of your pack, and just to advise the committee has received correspondence from an individual regarding an issue with an application to the Troubles Permanent Disablement Payment Scheme, and advise that the correspondence has also been sent to the Commissioner for Victims and Survivors, Secretary of State, Comptroller, Auditor General, Northern Ireland Audit Office, Mr Hamish Falconer MP for Lincoln, and the Northern Ireland Public Services Ombudsman. I'm asking you to note this item of correspondence and agree to forward the correspondence to the Victims Payment Board and request that they respond to the individual's concerns as outlined in the correspondence. Agreed? Okay, 10.43. So members refer you to pages 1110 to 1111 of the pack. Just to advise the committee has received a TO news release on the appointment of a new Commissioner for Victims and Survivors. I'm asking you to note this correspondence and agree to write to the new Commissioner to congratulate them on their appointment and to schedule an oral briefing with them in the new year. Okay, thank you. Okay, 10.38, pages 1101 to 1102 of the pack, and advise the committee has received a TO news release regarding the appointment of Claire Keating as new Commissioner for Public Appointments for Northern Ireland, and advise I'd ask you to note this piece of correspondence and agree to write to the new Commissioner to congratulate them on their appointment and to schedule an oral briefing with them in the new year. Agreed? Okay, I'm just going to ask the clerk to take over and go through the other list for noting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Well done.
Thank you.
So there are a number of other items, and if members will bear with me, I'll just briefly run through these. Item 10.2 is a report from the organisation Pivotal, 18 months of the Northern Ireland Executive, which members will recall was discussed at the meeting last week. So it's just to note that review was sent into the committee. Item 10.3, TEO news release, and that was a statement following the death of Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Kent. Item 10.4, which is the 43rd report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, and just to note there are no rules for the attention of this committee. Item 10.9, which was a departmental news release that FM and DFM welcomed a £115 million investment by Seagate Technologies in the Northwest. Item 10.11 from the Committee of Finance, which is the spending review assessment for the Executive, and again just for members to note. Item 10.14 is correspondence from the Minister for the Cabinet Office to the NI Scrutiny Committee European Commission Work Programme, again to note. Item 10.15 is a response from the Department to the Committee's correspondence on the 17th of June regarding Claire Soapton's proposed Members' Bill. Item 10.17 is a response from the Department to the Committee's correspondence on the 9th of June regarding the analysis of the 24-25 outturn and forecast outturn. Item 10.18 is a response from TEO to the Committee's correspondence on the 24th of June regarding an ageing population strategy. And Chair, if I may, I would just like to ask you to seek agreement to forward this response to the Commissioner for Older People.
Are we agreed? Okay, thank you.
Item 10.19 from the Strategic Investment Board. It's their annual review and financial statement for 24-25. Item 10.20, the annual report and accounts for 24-25 from the Equality Commission. Item 10.23, correspondence from the House of Lords NI Scrutiny Committee to the Right Honourable Nick Thomas Simmons MP, and that's around the Commission Work Programme. Item 10.25, commission from the House of Lords NI Scrutiny Committee to Farrell Clark MP, and that's on geographical indicators for craft. Item 10.25 is a news release from FM and DFM. That is the Ministers welcoming the major benefits and opportunity as the Open Golf Tournament returned to the North Coast. Item 10.26 is a written statement from FM and DFM on the publication of the Executive's second response to the COVID-19 inquiry Module RON report recommendations. Item 10.27, a response from the Minister for Communities to this committee's correspondence on the 24th of June regarding perceived difficulties survivors of HIA have encountered when applying for social housing. And again, Chair, I would ask you to seek agreement to forward that correspondence to the HIA groups.
Agreed?
Thank you. Item 10.28, correspondence from the Department to the Committee for the Communities correspondence regarding delays with the publication of the Irish Language Strategy, again for members to note. Item 10.29 is the TEO 2024 to 25 Consolidated Annual Report and Accounts. Item 10.33 is a response from the Department to the Committee's correspondence of the 9th of June regarding funding to support the Refugee Integration Strategy and its associated delivery framework. Again, members to note. Item 10.34 was a response to the Committee's correspondence on the 30th of May regarding Ending Violence Against Women and Girls Strategy. Item 10.35 is the Public Expenditure Data Bank from the NI Fiscal Council. Item 10.36 is a response to the Committee's correspondence on the 9th of July regarding what steps are being taken to embed the Eradicating Violence Against Women and Girls Strategy in schools. And again, Chair, I would ask if members we could seek agreement to forward that to the Youth Assembly, who brought it up during their evidence in July. Thank you. Item 10.37, correspondence from the Department to the Committee's correspondence in May regarding the High Street Task Force. Item 10.39, correspondence from FM and DFM announcing the recruitment of a chairperson and new board members to the Community Relations Council. Item 10.41, news release from TEO following Deputy FM and Finance Minister meeting the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Item 10.44 is a response to the Committee's correspondence of the 10th of July from the Education Authority regarding the End of Violence Against Women and Girls Strategy and specifically reporting systems in schools. And as per the previous correspondence, Chair, if you could seek agreement that we forward that to the Youth Assembly as well.
Agreed.
Thank you. We're nearly there. Item 10.45, Department's response to Committee's correspondence of the 24th of June in relation to the new AI and Digital Office. Item 10.46, correspondence from the Department of Health informing the Committee that the Health Minister visited the Shankill Women's Centre. Item 10.48, correspondence from Queen's University Belfast regarding the reinstatement of the body donation programme. Item 10.51, correspondence from AERC, Assembly and Executive Review Committee, that their call for evidence for its review on cost-cutting executive strategies will close on the 30th of September. And Chair, just to say, if any member wishes to comment individually, you can email myself by next week, and I will make sure that AERC receive that. Item 10.49 is correspondence from our member Claire Sugden, updating members that her call for evidence is now concluded on her members' bill. Item 10.50 is correspondence from the ERA Committee in relation to its call for evidence on the dilapidation bill. And again, Chair, I would ask that you seek agreement to write to the Department to seek its views on the bill before issuing a committee response.
Agreed.
Item 10.51 is correspondence from the Department to AERC Committee, again on its review of Assembly Committee engagement on cross-cutting executive strategies. Item 10.52 is the departmental response to correspondence of the 9th of July in relation to Connect and social coherent funding. Item 10.53 is the Department of Justice's response to committee correspondence on the 10th of July, looking at delivery and operational responsibilities for the EVAWAG strategy. Item 10.54 is a news release from the Department on the appointment of His Honour Judge Mark McGarity to serve on the Northern Ireland Judicial Appointments Commission. Item 10.55 is a news release from the Department, and that is an executive statement on recent racist and sectarian attacks. Item 10.57 is a Hansard report on the June monitoring session with TEO on the 25th of June with this committee. Item 10.58 is the 41st report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, and members will wish to know that there are no rules for the attention of this committee. Item 10.59 is the Investment Strategy NI, their June, July and August investing activity reports. Item 10.60, again, is a Hansard report, and that is into the Inquiry and Redress Scheme Bill, stakeholder list and consultation material, which happened at the committee's meeting on the 2nd of July. Item 10.61 is the Attorney General for Northern Ireland's annual report for 24-25. And finally, item 10.62 is from the Youth Assembly, and those are the reports from the Youth Assembly for Northern Ireland's Education Committee and Health Committee on a curriculum fit for the 21st century, learning for life and work, and mental health in schools.
Okay, thank you, Clark. That was useful. It was good to get that out of the way at the start. Members, just before we go into our first oral session, two things. First of all, I'd like to seek your agreement that Hansard will record this session. Okay, thank you. Members, we've got 4 oral evidence sessions today. We've timetabled them all for 45 minutes. We are conscious that sometimes we can spend too much time on the first, second panels, and then the fourth panel then maybe doesn't get as fresh and as much attention as the earlier one. So if we can try to keep our questions short, and if people have asked a question that you have on your list, if we can refrain unless you've a fresh one, then are we all agreed that we just want to try and maximise these sessions and give respect to our... Yep, okay. Okay, on that note, members, then we're going to move forward with our first session today. So we are going to hear from Professor Marie Breen Smyth. She is the interim chair from the Victims and Survivors Consultative Forum, and I'm going to refer you to pages 216 to 218 of your pack for the clerk's brief, and pages 219 to 224 of the pack for the written submission from the Consultative Forum. So you're very welcome, Marie. It's good to have you in front of committee, and I'd like you to make your opening remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, committee, for the invitation to come along. And when I got the invitation, I anticipated that the expectation would be that I would be able to speak on behalf of the forum. I can't speak on behalf of the forum because the forum speaks on behalf of themselves, and there's also quite a wide division of opinion amongst forum members, and indeed forum members only compose a small proportion of the total of the 6,000 people who we reckon are affected by the business of this committee and in this instance, and by the inquiry itself. So that's a kind of a health warning before I launch into this. So in preparation for this, and in your packs, I think you have a report from me on a survey that I conducted in preparation for today. And I propose just to walk you through the survey results by way of giving you a sense of what the views in the forum might be in relation to the bill. So that's my intention for today. So I've said there's a wide variety of opinions in the forum, so this is the best evidence base that I can establish anyway for that variety. So we sent out a questionnaire which was derived, the contents of which was derived from the frequently asked questions that the TO staff had come across, questions that had come up at the forum, and issues and opinions that were expressed therein and also elsewhere. So I compiled it all into a questionnaire, and I had 20 questions. You might want to note that there were lots of complaints that was too long. So I'm thinking about the 90 questions in the other survey. So there's a resistance, I think, to this method of communication, because I think some people, particularly the older cohort of people, don't have access to the internet. They're really only interested or only familiar with and comfortable in telephone communication. So it's an issue, I think, for all of us in terms of trying to improve access and access those opinions. So the responses were anonymous or anonymised, and we sent the questionnaire out to anyone who was registered with an email address. So that's larger than the forum. The forum's only 110 members, and we sent it out to 236. It closed on the 1st of September, and we got 54 responses. And I've calculated, being the nerdy person that I am, the margin of error on that, and that's 13.3% at 95% percentage of level of confidence, which means that any of the scores that you see here, they're within 13.3%, either plus or minus. You're fairly certain that that's an accurate reflection of the only of the 238 people that we've surveyed, not of the 6,000, if you see what I'm saying. So it's only a window into this issue. Okay, so the kind of questions, and you can read these at your leisure. I'm not really going to labour it because I'd like to go to the results. But these are the kind of questions that were in the questionnaire, and I can make available a longer survey report if you have the appetite to read it. And I've put that to the chair and to the vice chair, and you can come back to me on that. So the key findings then. And I've ordered these in terms of the degree of agreement with a particular, or the coherence of a particular view. And so the thing at the top there, which is 83% in my survey, but bearing in mind there's a margin of error, that therefore could be translated into either between 96% and 70% of forum members agree that the bill needs to be more specific about the degree of relationship that qualifies a person to claim redress. So that's the highest level of agreement. Then moving down, you had the bill should include all forced separation outside of the institutions. That's outside of the Magdalene Laundries, mother and baby homes, and the workhouses. So all forced separation should be included, and that was 68%, and you can apply the margin of error. Following on from that then, provision must be made for the payment of legal expenses of people participating in the forum, and that's victims and survivors. Legal expenses, not necessarily other people's. And again, you had a 67% agreement with that. There was also a 67% agreement that non-financial means of redress should be added into the bill. And these currently are available, but on a discretionary basis. So if they were written into the bill, that would move it on to a rights-based provision, and that would include DNA testing and support for family reunification, because you can imagine some of these families are very fractured, and when you bring in a new member, maybe, or introduce a new member, that kind of reunification can upset the apple cart, and support services may be required. Then there was a 66% of people thought that the legal powers that could ensure or require or compel the institutions to make financial contributions to the cost of the inquiry were inadequate. They needed to be strengthened, according to 66% of my respondents. In terms of the powers to compel evidence, 65% thought they weren't strong enough. And in terms of the role of the advisory panels, the advisory panels were welcomed by 65%. Now, those after that percentage, you can't be sure that it's a majority view. So I've broken it down into the next cohort of people. This is a Wordle derived from the survey responses, and this PowerPoint will be available to you if you wish to use that. The next lot are the less agreement, less coherence of view here. The posthumous date was agreed by 66%, but if you apply the margin of error, that goes down below 50%. So the posthumous date was a problem for quite a lot of people and needed to be changed. The list of institutions eligible for standardised payments was also a problem for 62%, and likewise 62% felt that it was unfair, or that they would not be prepared to take a lower standardised payment in order to bring more people in if there was a financial limit. I think the view, and I don't think I'm going off-piste here by saying, I think the view is the money needs to be found to do the job properly. Then in terms of the spouse and surviving children being eligible to receive a payment on behalf of a deceased relative, 58% felt that was the case, that they should be eligible. The bill should be guided by international human rights standards, according to 53%. The 53% again felt that they were included in the inquiry, which means that there's a margin of error there, but quite a substantial number of people felt that they were included, but that means another lot didn't feel they were included. And then on this, the outline, the clause 2, which outlines the main areas for investigation and how other areas could be added, notwithstanding that clause 2 makes provision for you to add areas later. 52% agreed that was that needed attention. Okay, so moving on then to, and that's the Wordle associated with those lots of findings. Then moving on to the final cohort of results. These were very mixed views, so there's quite a division of opinion on these issues. The bill has sufficient provision to monitor the implementation of the inquiry's recommendations. There is a mixed view about whether they have or have not sufficient provision. My reading of the bill is that there's not very much in there at all about this, but and I think perhaps some people didn't quite understand what the question was, but there it is, that's the result. The proposed standardised payment amount, there was actually quite a lot of division of opinion there, but 40% of them disagreed with that. My relative's experience as part of the inquiry, again, 40% agreed that was the case. That meant that there was another, and if there was a 60% on the other side, I would have reported that, but actually it's a mixed view. This doesn't apply to me as one of the possible responses. it doesn't affect me, etc. So there's other options. So this is the largest score there, and all the other scores are smaller. £80 million is an appropriate level of funding for the inquiry. 40% disagreed with that, but again, there was other mixed responses in other places. Clause 4 included the main relevant persons, and again, there was a disagreement about that. There wasn't a majority view on it. And then the scope of the inquiries, and the inclusion of institutions and their past days and practices, notwithstanding that it was only 38% agreed with that. In fact, there are very strongly held views on all of these issues, even if they are held only by a minority of victims and survivors. Nonetheless, if you can imagine what it feels like to feel that your experience and your experience is everything to you is excluded, that drives people to be very upset and angry about the exclusions in the bill. So that's the wordle associated with that, and that's the end of the.
That's good. I was just about to say we're well over the 5 minutes there, but thank you very much, Marie, for you outlining this consultation that you undertook yourself. So I'm going to pick up on one of the outcomes. For example, they're happy to take a lower standardised payment to increase the amount of people who would be eligible, I think, applicable. So that very much contradicts the evidence that we've received so far in terms of everybody, I think, who's responded so far think that the standardised payment should be more.
Yes, yeah.
So how do those two
Sorry, I may have misrepresented that result. There was a strong feeling that it wasn't fair to even ask that question. Now, it is a view that's held by a very small number of people, so I put it to the people who were responding to the survey, and the view, very strong view on some parts, was no, you can't ask us to do that. Okay. That's not fair. Okay.
Okay. And in terms of, for example, the posthumous date, were there any strong threads that you were unearthing in terms of the responses around where people would feel it would be a good settling point in terms of the
1995 has been mentioned, but I'm not sure. I couldn't. I mean, there isn't one particular date that was people coalesced around. So I think the general principle for all of these things is maximal. The maximal inclusion possible, and that applies to all of the dates that actually then end up excluding people. It also applies to the institutions and indeed people outside of the institutions. So there's a general principle here that the more people who are included, if you have endured an institutionalisation, being separated from your family, a forced separation from your infant, if you as an infant has been separated from your parent and trafficked or sent to another part of the country and adopted, that all of those people should be involved, irrespective of whether they were in an institution or not. That would be a general view, and you don't find too many voices raised against that.
Okay. Just last one very quickly for me. That finding there around my relatives' experience as part of the inquiry, do you get any sense of what that would look like and whether...
Well, the people who've responded positively to that are people who are content that they're actually included in the bill as it stands. Okay. So then there are other people who couldn't respond positively to that, who don't feel that that's the case. I think in a small number of instances, so for example at the familiarisation event in Wave, I met 3 women at that event for the first time who weren't part of any process, who didn't know anything about the bill. In fact, I nobbled Nick, who was put in the position of having to mark up a copy of the bill so that they could go home and read it. So you're dealing with, you're trying to catch up with things as we go along here, and more and more people are emerging now. As I go about my daily life, people are identifying themselves to me, and indeed I've just yesterday met another woman who actually her mother was in a mother and baby home, and she didn't know her sibling. So as we go along, and as I go about my business and people know what I'm doing here, people are coming forward and identifying themselves. So it's very hard to be definitive, Paula, about any of it. Chair, sorry.
That's really the first time that's come up for me. Go ahead, please, Deputy Chair.
Thanks. Sorry, thank you. Appreciate the work that's been done so far in all of this. And just very briefly, I think you really have answered the question for me, but this is the bill requiring or should include issues around forced separation outside the specific scope of the bill. Could you just expand a little on what is meant by forced separation?
Okay, so if we think about a family whose teenage daughter, let's say, is pregnant outside of wedlock, it would seem to me that there is a degree of coercive control involved by sending that child, which is what very often was the case, off to give birth without the support of their family, and then to make it clear that the child that is born is unacceptable in the family circle. So that in itself, I think, is an issue, and that's a societal issue. It's a family issue, and can I speak then to the need for support for family reunification? So you can see how a woman or a child at that stage has been through that may well have all sorts of very fractured family relationships. And bringing that child that was excluded in the first instance back into that family, they may have found ways of not speaking about things and coping with it that way. You bring the child in, and lo and behold, everything is up for grabs again, and all of those terribly difficult issues have to be renegotiated. So you can see that there's a huge burden on families. I mean, it sounds like a happy story when you watch the TV programmes about long lost relatives, but actually it's not. I mean, I'm a former family therapist, so I mean, these are very, very difficult and troubling issues for people, and they have left long-term effects, and our mental health services will not be of assistance.
Okay, Carol, please.
Thanks again for the survey. The thing that I'm querying is the money for legal support.
Yes.
So why do people feel they need that,
well,
in your experience?
When I joined the forum, there was a view that irrespective of the actual inquiry itself, because there is provision, I think, for legal representation for witnesses to the inquiry. Yeah. But when I joined the forum, one of the first things that was a case was made to me was the need for legal advice in general about the bill, which is why we organised the event in the Europa Hotel.
So that's fine, because I mean I just wondered, because there is provision for it in the bill. Just very quickly, the other question in relation to compellability, are there aspects from what you said is that some of the victims and survivors are not confident that the measures in the bill will be enough to compel the institutions to pay and the institutions to come and give evidence? Yeah. And that's their experience.
Well, I think first of all, I would say that I don't know of anybody on the forum who doesn't have a very strong view that the institution should pay. Yeah. I think that's absolutely, and I think that's a view shared here. Yeah. The issue is really the mechanisms by which that's compelled, and the strength of the compunction that's on the institutions and how you set about that. Now, it's been discussed at the forum, and I think really, again, the maximal approach, every power that's available to the government needs to be exercised there, bearing in mind, of course, that the government is one of the parties to this. And if you think about it from the point of view, again, of victims and survivors, these people have been let down very badly for decades by authority. Mm-hmm. So they have very little faith and trust in authority, and so therefore they want to see mechanisms in there that are copper fastened.
Okay, thank you. Sinead, please.
Carol actually covered, because I was looking at the legal powers as well, about were they strong enough to compel or get contributions from the institutions, because from everything that we've heard from the victims and survivors, that's a really strong ingrained part of the justice of it, and it's interesting to hear your response there. And then I was talking about clause 16, so Carol's covered both mine, and I'll not put you through them again. Okay, thank you. Timothy, please.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Survey's been very helpful. I suppose what concerns me, out of 236 people it's been circulated with, that we have basically 23% of people that have responded.
That's right.
And I'm just concerned as we go through this stage where this is the opportunity for people to engage, to effect change, to get something that reflects and something's fit for purpose. How do we get more people to engage at this stage?
Well, I mean, I think it's something that really troubles me as well. I think I've spoken already about the reliance on Zoom meetings, the reliance on email as being a barrier for many people who are out there and affected because they're not on the internet. They might be able to take a phone call and talk on the phone, but face-to-face communication is the absolute way into some of this. And that's why I keep turning up at your familiarisation process, because I scan the audience for faces that I've never met before, and then I go and talk to them. Now, the other thing that happens to me all the time is people in other meetings on other business will come forward. They'll wait till they get me on their own, and then they'll come and say to me, I've got you on your own so I can tell you I was a birth mother. And I think the barrier very often is shame. I think the barrier in some communities, the barrier of shame is higher in some communities than in others, and that's witnessed by for example, the response from the two communities. I think there's a role for community leaders of all kinds, including yourselves, to actually put out the word about this and to make strong statements about shame in particular, because the shame should not belong to victims and survivors. The shame should belong to the people who have perpetrated the abuses that are covered by this inquiry. And I think that's a political job, and I'm not a politician.
And I get we have a role to play in that, but my fears are grounded in that if members of the forum who are engaging with you, who have engaged with you in the past, are reluctant to talk to you about it, they're not going to step through the door or respond to the survey to step through the door to talk to us in this room. We have taken measures to change the room to make it more
absolutely
more aesthetically neutral.
Uh-huh.
But
I think they're not reluctant to talk to me if I sit with them and talk to them. I think they don't like surveys. I think that's two separate questions. I think for me the gold standard is face-to-face contact. And so I think, and they've told me that they don't like surveys. They told me that and also this survey is too long, etc., etc. And I'm fed up doing bloody surveys. Or surveys every 10 minutes, and it's awful. So, and what I think, there's also an issue of the respect for these people and actually talking to them face to face, sitting down, giving them your time. And I think that is something that I think is really the preferred way forward. You have a huge difficulty, I think, reaching all of these 6,000 people who are out there, and some of them don't want to come forward, don't want to be identified, and they've every right not to. But at the same time, there are people, and I'm coming across them all the time, who don't know about this, who don't know about what's going on, and don't know that they're included.
Final question, just quickly.
I'm going to bring you back in, Timothy, just for this point in it. We have got 3 roundtables that we're going out across the country, and I think that will be our opportunity to have those face-to-face. Please go ahead.
Just quickly, want to pick up, Carl's already mentioned it, 21.2, and it's the legal expenses. Is there an expectation that everybody that attends will have a solicitor with them and that will be paid? And is that something that has been costed out as part of this process? Like, it's down here that it talks about where the chairperson with the approval of the executive office considers it appropriate. I don't want to be in a place where people are expecting something that won't be delivered. So there needs to be a clear understanding of what the legal expenses are, that there's a purse to actually pay for that, before we build up expectations.
I have that down as a question as well around how people are going to be supported to make their application to the Redress Board, for example. So, but I think that is in relation to representation at the inquiry. So,
yes.
Yeah, these are all questions up in the air at the minute, Timothy, and we can certainly put them to you.
Okay. I think there is an expectation that there will be legal support. Now, that whether or not that's the case, that's a matter for you to take forward. But I mean, there is a strong desire that you shouldn't be appearing in front of an inquiry without some kind of legal representation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brian, please.
Thank you, Chair. Have you done any analysis or have you asked the community affiliation in terms of Northern Ireland, Protestant Unionists, Catholic Nationalist background of those who've engaged with the forum and taken part in the questionnaire?
In the questionnaire, that wasn't included. In terms of the forum, I know of 2 people who have identified themselves as having come through the Protestant institutions. I'm not sure that I think I can say that the majority have come through the Catholic institutions. And I think that's borne out by other evidence that the TEO have elsewhere. So there's a predominance of the Catholic institution being represented in the body of victims and survivors that I'm aware of. And I think, and it's interesting that some of the people that have identified themselves to me and have said that they want to identify themselves but they don't want to be part of the process or have come through the Protestant institutions. So, but that's not scientific. That is very, that's very impressionistic, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Chair, it's a concern I have that there is a perception that it's affected more people within the Catholic community, and I mean, the institutions concerned were from both sides of the community and state agencies involved. And I think I get the impression that it is more difficult to reach people within the Protestant community.
That's right.
In this process. So even you're saying your own analysis of the responses.
It's also, I think,
back that up.
I spoke to one political representative who represented the Protestant community who said to me, well, of course, this doesn't affect the Protestant community. So it's not just victims and survivors have that impression. It's much more broad, and people who are representing people politically have that impression as well. So I think there is a job of work to be done in terms of I'm not that I'm about to tell you what to do, but I think there is an impression there which needs to be corrected.
Mm-hmm. And your engagement is just with members of the forum, is it specifically, or have you reached out beyond the forum membership?
Well, I mean, I have other roles in which I have a broader, largely in the Loyalist community. And these are people who have, and because I work largely in the Loyalist community, these are people who have come forward in that context. But I've come across women who've approached me, or I've approached at your familiarisation sessions who've all gone through the Catholic institutions who are happy to be included, but the people who are coming to me from the Loyalist community are not. And we would need to do a large investigation into finding out what the factors are that cause that, but that's my experience for what it's worth.
Sorry, can I just ask you to clarify? Are you saying the people from PUL community who had been affected by these issues have
approached me,
but haven't wished to engage?
Exactly.
But you know they were affected?
Well, they told me. Yeah,
right.
They told me.
And so in what way were they having that conversation with you then?
Well, I mean, at a meeting, somebody will wait for me afterwards and they'll come up and they'll say, I know that you're doing this work with the inquiry, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm a birth mother, but I don't want to be part of the... I just wanted to let you know. So there's something there that's impelling them to reveal themselves. And I would obviously leave it open to have...
They want to keep it concealed?
I think in the instances that I've come across, they're concerned for their families and their children in particular. And I think there may... And of course, you have to think about why would that be? And again, I keep going back to shame. So that these women are still feeling there's some kind of stigma.
Even though they could participate anonymously and so on?
Oh, I mean, well, the thing is you can be anonymous up to a point in this process. And if you want to participate in the forum, it's quite difficult to do that anonymously. I mean, some people don't turn their cameras on, but we still need a link to them, and they need to identify themselves to the TEO staff so they've been sent out the link for the meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, was this the similar experience with the HIA?
I was actually going to say...
Because do you remember the group of people came afterwards from
White Abbey Training? Yes.
White Abbey Training School last year.
Yeah, they didn't feel that it was relevant to them, and that's why I think that the truth recovery part has to be dropped from the inquiry. Tyler, are we going to say something, Timothy? No. Okay. Listen, thank you so much. We're trying to be very prompt with our evidence session, but if you could, I know you've sent that, but if there's anything else, come forward. We do look forward to seeing you at the roundtable sessions. It's useful to have you there as well. But thank you for now.
Thank you. Just before I leave, just on I think the other issue is to pay attention to language. So in some of the communication I've seen referenced testimony, which in Protestant community can mean something rather different, So just to be careful about language in terms of the two communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie, that's a good point. Okay. Members, we'll just take our ease for 1 minute.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our next session. Members, just seek your agreement for Hansard to record this session as well. Okay, so
We'll just ask the representatives to come from the support room, so they'll be here in a minute or two.
So the next witnesses for the next oral session are coming forward. So in the meantime, I'm just going to refer you to page 407 of your pack for the written submission from the birth mothers and their children for justice, just to refresh yourself what they submitted in advance of committee today. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? And it's just out of pure ignorance, but see the meaning of testifying in the PEL committee. What does that mean?
Testimony, if you were given, if you were saved, you were a Christian, would imagine standing up.
Rather than a legal one?
Yeah, just giving a life account.
Just your own experience, how you came to God? Okay, thank you.
Almost stand in front of people, sharing your faith, and I would imagine that's maybe what...
Your life story,
Right.
No, that was a good question.
That's
Maybe we should have
It's just
probed
that
a bit.
I didn't, honestly, and I didn't want to ask it in open session in case people thought I was trying to be smart, but I just, I've heard it said before and I don't really understand it.
Sometimes in our churches,
Oh,
like
stop, sorry, we are,
That's okay. Don't worry.
Sorry.
Don't worry.
sorry.
There you go.
I nearly, yeah, sorry.
Welcome, ladies.
How are
Take your
yous?
time. Welcome back to committee. So, members, I'm just going to reacquaint you with Oonagh McAleer. She's from the Birth Mothers and Children for Justice, and she's accompanied with Mechelle, Dillon, also from the Birth Mothers and their Children for Justice. So, we have heard from both ladies in closed session before, some of your own experiences. We are obviously here today to hear your thoughts, concerns, aspirations for the bill. So, we appreciate you've submitted your evidence in advance. We've all had a chance to read that, but you have got an opportunity now to make some opening remarks. So just when you're ready, ladies. Okay.
Afternoon, committee members and chairperson. Thank you for inviting birth mothers and their children for justice to give evidence today. We welcome the opportunity to attend this session and welcome the bill. Today we would like to express our acknowledgement and appreciation on a number of points throughout the bill and propose amendments that we deem fit. I would like to open with our acknowledgement to section 31, subsections 1 to 5a, where it clearly lays a foundation for who is entitled to payment. Whilst we welcome and appreciate the criteria highlighted in this section, we would like to draw attention to subsection 5b, the posthumous date. While we respect the investigation going on from 1922 to 1995, we strongly oppose the use of the date, September 29th of 2011, for the posthumous claim for standardised payment. With this in mind, I can see the conflict in views on this date. On one hand, 1922 was a long time ago, and yes, we have to take into account the relatives of the deceased. Would they still be alive today, and would they be aware of their family history? On the other hand, these were real people who experienced real trauma, and they deserve justice and acknowledgement like the rest of us. This also includes babies that sadly passed while in these institutions. How can we forget about them? We also have to consider, would an inquiry from 1922 to 1995 have consequences to the time frame in mind for redress, and would it prolong the investigation? On the 15th of April 1924, the Executive passed motion of progress on the baby loss certificate for those who experienced miscarriage before 24 weeks. So if the Executive had sympathy for that, surely they can uphold the same sympathy for any woman and girl and child who endured the horrors of these institutions and passed before the 29th of September 2011. We know having the date start at 1922 in regards to the entitlement of payment is unrealistic. However, we suggest moving this forward to 1953, likewise to what the HIA had done with their date, April 1953. The majority of victims and survivors felt the claims on behalf of the deceased should be allowed for both redress schemes, individual and standardised payments, although some families felt it might be hard to provide adequate detail for an individual assessment. The majority said the terms of reference should go right back to 1922, being the formation of the Northern Ireland state, and that the inquiry should have discretion to consider institutions and not be given a narrow prescriptive remit, which again blocks out those who may have important testimonies to tell. Furthermore, the legislation stipulates that who can apply on behalf of a deceased person to be a partner or a child of the deceased. This was an issue in the HIA. The legislation should allow the deceased wishes per their will to be abided by. Some people do not have partners or children that they have a relationship with, and their pain was no less and should be no less compensated. Many of those who have suffered as a result of these institutions will have seen their families fractured as a consequence of the hurt and inflicted. To avoid such unfairness, we consider there should be a scope for an application to be made for those who are the primary beneficiary of the deceased person's will, or where they can provide evidence to demonstrate, on the balance of probabilities, that is appropriate for them to make such a claim. We must also consider those who have never had the opportunity to prepare a will through no fault of their own. We also consider it important to ensure that children of birth mothers who were taken from them and or adopted by others might make a claim on behalf of the deceased parent, even if by reason of adoption they are not considered their next of kin. In addition, it seems clear that almost all claimants to the Magdalene Laundries mother and baby homes, including Workhouses Redress scheme, would ultimately be awarded figures in excess of £10,000 at the standardised payment stage. This was put forward in the consultation responses, and the figures must be amended. Our responses suggested an increase to £20,000 for the standardised payment. This is because in 2017, victim and survivors of the HIA received £10,000, and with the recent inflation of the cost of living, £10,000 would not be sufficient. Survivors have suffered criminality of these serious levels. Lives have been ruined. They should have compensation that recognises the loss and damage, and should not be it should not be the same level as a whiplash claim. This would be a further insult. Furthermore, the £2,000 that is to be awarded to legible relatives of the deceased is unacceptable and beyond adequate. How can the executive put a price on anyone's life and their experiences? These people have gone to their graves without any justice and recognition. Surely you can do better. Before I pass on to Oonagh, I would also like to take the time to acknowledge and appreciate that any benefits will not be affected by either standardised payment or the individually assessed payment. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mechelle. Go ahead, Oonagh, please.
Good afternoon, committee, and thank you for the invitation here today. Basically, what I would like to start with, I would like to make reference to about the HIA and to the submission section 6 in the EFM, as quoted. This inquiry will not duplicate the work of the HIA institutionalised abuse. Whilst we agree with this, in 2009, victims of survivors of the HIA spoke out, and in a result, there was a report in 2017. Mother and baby institutions were not included, and we were left out. We were underage pregnant girls. This, in fact, we were children. We would have been in the scope, but because we were pregnant, we were discriminated against. Some girls were only 13 and 14 years of age and received no justice. We had no options but to campaign for an inquiry over a decade and a half, and by the time we are finished, we will, with our own inquiry, we will be into 2 decades. People are sick and dying,
This is unfair to leave anyone out. It must be inclusive of all institutions in Northern Ireland. Leaving anyone out would be adding insult to injury. The 11 institutions that are on column on page 29 must be amended. All mother and baby institutions, Magdalene, Laundries, Workhouses, children's homes and cross-border example phone. The lack of clarity around this list needs to be done immediately. All these institutions have the right to be investigated. There were so many systematic failings, human rights denied of young girls, women and their children, now adults. We believe the time frame from 1922 to 1995 and all the adoptions and fosterings and those children who were boarded out, we believe in historical adoptions of our children, and they should remain a factor and not the whole adoption system of today's practices. We believe the inquiry will investigate systematic failings by the organisations and public bodies. But will this scope examine what happened in the institutions for the treatment of relative persons while under the care of the prescribed institutions, when their children, now adults, were taken from their mothers? We believe in no individual or institution should be left overlooked and no stone left unturned. We wish to include relevant persons, example, the babies, the children who died whilst in the care of these institutions, and the unmarked graves where their little remains lie. The grounds have not been protected. We want to know who took the babies, how did the babies get buried, and who disposed of these babies in these mass graves in Milltown Cemetery, Belfast, and Killevy Graveyard, Newry. We know that there's 2,000 remains in Oonagh, behind the police barracks, where there was a maternity wing for the workhouse, and those graves have not even been looked at. The ground is overgrown. All these institutions must receive recognition. It has also been pointed out that releasing of documents for the relevant persons may cause them harm. This is a big issue for victims and survivors. So we know a lot of detail that people are still having trouble accessing information. It would be helpful in providing relevant information and evidence for the inquiry to victims and survivors. The survivors are being told that their records could traumatise them. However, we feel this is worse not knowing this vital information. Withholding information is in no one's best interests. This is the truth and recovery. And without the truth, we don't have any recovery. Clause 4. The public proceedings. A lot of victim survivors, they're out there and they're very emotional and they're harmed from their life's experiences in these institutions. We believe that they must be protected at all times through these proceedings. The HIA got no protection. We don't want the same to happen in this inquiry. We need accountability.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies. I wonder, can we maybe get copies of your notes?
We have copies for you.
Thank you so much. There's quite a lot in that, and just give us a bit more time to digest it. I've got agreement with the committee here that if somebody's asked a question, we'll not duplicate it. So if others don't ask questions, it's because you've covered it. So just be aware of that. Okay, so I want to pick up on the posthumous date. I know this is something you have spoken about, not just today, but in the past. And I suppose I'm struggling with any justification that it wouldn't even stretch all the way back to 1922. You had mentioned there around 1953, I think that's in relation to HIA in terms of So do you want to speak to us a wee bit about why you don't think it should be the, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but why it should not just go right back to the start?
Well, if you went right back to the start, to 1922, basically from 1922, if there was a birth mother that was still alive today, she would be 103 years of age. And if she had a child at the age of 16, her child would be 87 today. Maybe, possibly, not with us. And if we went halfway to even 1956, it would be about halfway. I don't know about the so far, but if you did go back to the 103-year-old and maybe possibly the 87-year-old child, if she's still alive, and then maybe her child, and then her child, that's 4 generations. Yeah,
I think the reason why I'm grappling with it a bit is that this is meant to be an acknowledgement payment in some ways, and I think that if we were to exclude anybody in this, then we are not acknowledging all the women and their children who passed through. So that's sort of what I'm grappling with a wee bit. I suppose the other area I'd just like to ask you about, and that's around the amount. You did mention there around 2017. I think the Act went through Westminster in 2020. So I think our responses indicated that everybody's response so far, 10,000 is not enough, and there's been sort of response between 12,500 to 15,000. So do you want to talk a wee bit more around why it's important that people feel that the acknowledgement, the redress payment, it makes them feel that they've been recognised?
Well, in 2017, the goods and services costing 10,000 in 2017 would now cost £13,443.71, and that was from July this year. So really, when you count £10,000 back then in 2017 to 10,000 now, it's nothing with the way the cost of living is going now.
Okay, just a last one from me, and it's in relation to the purpose of admission. So clause 31 2b, and basically it says there that by reference to receipt to the receipt of shelter or maintenance does not include the receipt of shelter or maintenance incidental to the provision of medical, surgical and maternity services. I find that quite clumsy, and I suppose some of the feedback has been that it's unclear as to how people are eligible. I'm just wondering if some of the words around the eligibility, if you have any thoughts on how they could be tidied up to demonstrate why the women were in there and the treatment that they received. Don't worry if you haven't got a thought, but maybe it's something we can come back to. Just
Give
think
it to you, maybe in writing.
Okay, no problem. I'll move on. Go ahead, please, Deputy Chair.
Thank you, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is very important to us, and what you've been saying has been very helpful. Can I just tease out around the area, and this is an area of an interest in, about the list of homes and institutions. And have you been able to identify places which you feel have been, are not listed, and how can you help us to find more places?
The 11 that's listed there doesn't serve purpose at all. The scope's not wide enough. I mean, we know other people that are on our group, and they come under, like, even the care, the children's homes. They're not there. I mean, they need recognition. People don't realise even that they're in this inquiry until they see it in black and white. They're asking questions and then they're still not believing you because it's not there until people see that they have no, basically, security that they're in it. But the amount of orphanages that was in Northern Ireland, there was Portadown, they were in Strabane, they were in Oonagh, they were in Fermanagh, they were all over the place. I mean, nobody has done their homework on this, basically. I mean, this is happening now. We are saying that this has been going on now for a decade and a half.
And can you provide us with names or addresses of these
By all
children's
means.
homes. That would be very helpful to
You
us,
know, I mean,
so that we can quiz officials
honest-
and say, well, why didn't you consider this particular place?
One is one of the one of the main places, Connie Warren Home. Connie Warren Home, where a lot of children were trafficked to, from Newry especially, and brought down maybe 3 at a time from Newry, and brought them to Fawn. That seemed to be a big path. And Derry seemed to be one of the biggest places where children were taken to. And if you go back now, you'll find even that we're talking to children, adoptees that are now adults. That a lot of them do come from Derry. They were placed down there. Their mother might have came from Belfast and she was shipped away to England or shipped down the south of Ireland, away as far as possible from that child, that you would never find it. I mean, we were stripped of everything. I know we're talking to you here today, and we're trying to make you understand what happened, but you'll never understand. You know, you are only getting a small piece that we're offering you here as birth mothers. In actual fact, I have, with our group here today, the people that are sitting and listening to us in the next room, there's 3 more girls that are there, women, and they were underage. The HIA said that they catered for girls that was over the age of 18, and there was nobody in them institutions that were over that age, under that age of 18. There's 3 sitting in there that are alive today, including myself.
Chair, just to reiterate and to say to you and to anybody that's listening, if you believe that you have a connection with some other establishment or place, please tell us.
By all means, we'll send that list, and no problem. And
Thank you.
yeah,
Leah, please.
Yeah, and good to see you here today, that we've reached this point that you're giving evidence now on an actual bill as well, so it's good to see you, and Mechelle. I mean, I do agree, a lot of babies went from Derry, went to Fawn, and mothers, you know, so there's the border didn't exist for, you know, for that purposes, so we really need to dig down deep and make sure that we have the relevant institutions listed in the bill itself. So the other thing that I just want to kind of ask you again, just maybe your assessment about the need to compel the religious institutions to contribute financially, and how you feel about that, and in terms of a justice being served, and that, and as you rightly said, you know, we'll never have an understanding because it wasn't our lived experience, but how important is that piece to you?
the organisations that were that this to us, that left us with these legacies of suffering and mental health issues, that's going to take a lifetime for us to get over. Whenever we're finished with this, they should be made, they should be compelled now, because I believe if they were compelled now to pay up now, it would even leave you more with a manageable pocket, that you could even put that date back of 2011. We're talking about our children's taxpayers' money, our children that are paying into the tax. And this pocket of money that you have at the present minute, I was beginning to wonder, is that the reason why this cut-off date is there? Because the funding is not there. But we're not here to talk about money. We're talking about human lives. Women that were in there, like myself, and were tortured. It was a torture chamber. That's what it was. Nothing else. But, as I say, if you were to compel them nuns and other institutions now, it might leave a bigger scope. and the pocket for you to be fit to go back and say, we can turn this clock back to a suitable date and give the people the justice that they deserve.
It shouldn't be down to the public purse.
No.
Thank you. Okay, Carol, please.
Thank you. So you mentioned the concern around not getting access to information. So that's, so as the chair, we're all looking at different questions. It's not, we're just trying to pick up from what you said related to the bill. One of the concerns is that, one of the concerns that most of us have is particularly around clause 16, where the disclosure of the institutions is almost under a public interest test, and we've got concerns with that. And equally, so we just to let us know that that's some of the issues that we're coming back to, because you've raised that, and also access to information. We need to look at how we can strengthen the bill to ensure that anyone gets access to information. Like, we all understand the GDPR and the human rights around the right to privacy and everything else. We all understand that. But when you're looking at a public inquiry into an absolute scandal, and the very institutions that were responsible for covering all this up should not be allowed to hold on to information that's going to give you redress and justice. So it's just to let us know that.
People need to know the truth.
They do.
Right? And if you haven't got your file in front of you, how are you meant to stand in front of a judge in an inquiry and not tell the truth about what happened to you? It's not going to be the end of your story.
And I suppose the question that I have really is, it's in terms of, in the bill, there's the potential for witnesses to be supported by legal services. I suppose what we've heard from others is that there's a level of support needed through legal support in the run-up to the inquiry, as well as possibly other aspects that's going to give people some other redress other than the payment. What are your views on that?
Well, I believe, surely, people are entitled to...
Sorry, have you got an expectation that you're going to get a solicitor? I should have put that in clear
Oh,
terms.
most definitely.
Okay.
And the reason why I believe that there should be someone there for survivors, I'm just going to say it as it is. You get legal representation. We're survivors, and we need someone out there that is that we trust, maybe that we could grow up some kind of a relationship with, and they're there for us. Like, sometimes when we're going into places like that, we become a child again, and they're the adult, and they've got a voice. Some people out there, we're here today because of all the people that are sick, and they don't have a voice. They haven't been there as long as we have been there. So we're here as representatives for them today, and we're talking through them. But we need that legal representation, and I've been saying it for a very, very long time, because it's trust. We need to be there. We need to have somebody there that we can trust. That is, I know you aren't going to say you aren't on our side or anything like that there, but you are neutral.
Some of us aren't.
Some of you aren't, but people have to. In your positions, we have to say, you have to balance it out there, okay? So we need to have someone that's there for us, as that support mechanism that we need. That's going to walk the road with us. That's very, very important.
No, I just wanted it.
Does that answer your question?
No, it absolutely does, Oonagh, because I think we needed to hear from you that there is an expectation for victims and survivors who will attend this inquiry and possibly be witnesses, that there's an expectation that you will have legal support. And it's not clear. It's clear for witnesses, but not clear for the process getting from there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Just for
Thank you.
bringing Timothy in, I suppose that is a point that I'm grappling with, is around what weight the testimonies that the independent panel, Truth Recovery Independent Panel, have gathered, and I believe they've been given an extension for a few more months to take more testimonies. And I'm just wondering, you know, what weight or what importance those testimonies will be given in the inquiry over people like these ladies here actually speaking to the panel. So I think that's something we need to drill down on. Timothy, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. I suppose where I want to start off is, he had said about us being neutral. I come at this where I believe there's a moral duty in each one of us that's engaged in this process, that we put something in place that's fit for purpose to recognise the hurt that has been caused over many, many years. When I look at Schedule 2, and I'm taking on your points and just following on from Stuart, we need you to share the information with us. So the homes, the places where you say there's unmarked graves, for the likes of myself, I am in no way over the detail of this. I'm dependent on the witnesses coming forward. I have the bill in front of me, but I don't have the lived experience, and that's why it's so important for you to come to committee and share your lived experience and share what's happened with the stories and the testimonies you have. So I want to see a full list of who you believe should be on this. I want to know of the areas where you believe that there's babies buried, that we can then chase that up. You have mentioned clause 4 when you were given your evidence. Can you expand a bit more on that? Because I was unclear. So clause 4 is the definition of relevant persons. What your issue is with clause 4, where does the bill not go far enough? Is there aspects of that clause you agree with? Just so I can have it in my head, when you mention clause 4, what is the issues?
Well, it doesn't cover, as I say, I suppose the institutions that's listed, you know, and as I say, that there should be clear. It should be a lot clearer that and prescribed institutions that are there, you know.
I think that, not to put words in your mouth, Mechelle, I think you'd mentioned, like, for example, where a woman's maybe had stillborn baby or a child that's died. Is that in terms of relevant persons? It's not relevant institutions, but I think we're now talking about relevant persons.
All right.
The Schedule 2 was about the homes, and that was just
We on about
reinforcing
the miscarriage, the
relevant persons. So when I had asked the question, essentially, yes, I was a Schedule 2. I was reinforcing the Vice Chair's point, and that we need the information, we need the detail. But then when it was going on to clause 4, the definition of persons, you had mentioned it, but just so I have it crystal clear what the issues are, what you want to see included in the bill.
That's grand. We can get that written up to you and get it sent to you by email if that's possible.
Okay, thank you. Claire, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for sharing your experience and your 100%. You know, we will never know what it feels like, and the lasting legacy of that. I suppose what I'm hearing, and I think maybe where the bill doesn't reflect that, and I'd be keen to hear your views on that, is how we deal with children's experiences of this. You know, because you're right, under 18 are children, despite being mothers. How do you feel where this bill maybe doesn't really reflect that, and how we deal with how children were treated in all of this?
You mean women, girls that had their babies? Or?
Yeah, children, anyone under the age of 18. So I was kind of interested in your comments in relation to that they weren't necessarily eligible because...
They weren't eligible in the HIA.
Okay.
Basically, just we were left out. We were, as I say, we were discriminated against because we were pregnant. If we hadn't been pregnant, we would have been in the HIA. You know, it's clear as the nose on anybody's face. Like it was discrimination.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of generally the children that was involved in this, do you think this bill reflects that experience and the lasting kind of impact of that?
Well,
in terms of what it's trying to do.
I suppose, it needs to be more depth looked into, and people need to probably come more forward and give their stories.
almost as an additional piece of work to
Yeah,
what we're trying to do.
exactly,
And
yeah.
we haven't really looked into that issue in itself.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, Harry, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Mechelle, and then, Mechelle, you'd mentioned about grounds and graves and not protected. You mentioned Milltown, Killeavy, but you especially mentioned Oonagh, you know,
That was
police
Oonagh
station.
mentioned that,
Yeah.
sorry.
Was that, what more thoughts can you tell us on?
Well, what I can remember, even from Morainville, there was grounds there, there was graves there, and that ground has all been dug up. It's gone. There was an archaeologist out there some time ago, and what the report that went back, I don't think it was suitable, but there is still a small graveyard in Newry. But in Carracuppin, there is a grave, and it's 16 foot by 8 foot. I don't know if Sean O'Connell has put it into his report, but we did tell him it was there. We were told by a man that works in the graveyard. The words he said to me was, "You know what's in there, and so do I. There's 3 tokens of gesture on it, and the 3 tokens of gesture are from the Good Shepherd's convent. It's distinctly on the grave. And it says when the baby died. It doesn't say when the baby was born. There's a date on it when it died. So it had to have lived to die." And then we go up then to Middletown, and where the Bog Meadows is. There's babies buried up there. There has been babies buried all over the place in Northern Ireland, and I think it's an awful shame. It's a tragedy.
Yeah.
It's Northern Ireland's shame. But I know we don't want to get into the tomb aspect or anything like that there, but I do feel that these graves and these babies need respect. Not only that, not every woman that had a baby survived either.
Yeah.
And some of these girls went into these institutions, never came out of them. I do remember that there was a girl, and she was carried out the back door in Morainville. And we said, "Where did she go?" She went out through the back door because she'd died. She'd taken an overdose of the tablets we were supposed to have been given. She you know, it's, as I said, the experience that we have and we have lived through, it haunts me every night.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Thank you.
Just 2 quick questions. I brought so many notes with me today. I just spotted them. So, in terms of the definition of relevant persons, there's a suggestion that we should define fathers of forcibly adopted children to be included as relevant persons. Is that something you feel, in terms of the people you're working with, that fathers' voices are not heard in this?
Well, there is a member that's in our group, and the father was about, but he was told politely to bugger off.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So he didn't get to say what was going to happen to his girlfriend.
Yes.
That was pregnant at the time. So basically fathers were also as well told to, we'll take over this. Even though he was willing to take his manly duties and stand up for this girl, but no.
Okay.
As evidence in that, whenever a girl went into these institutions, the question was never about the father. Mm-hmm. The father was always put down unknown.
Yeah.
And even on a birth certificate, it was put down unknown. It wasn't our choice.
Yeah.
It was done for us.
Okay, thank you. Just another very quick question. That's in clause 32. That's the time limit for applications for a payment. So it's suggested in the bill that it should be 3 years, but some people have said that's not long enough, it should be 5. But obviously there would be costs for keeping the scheme open for an extra couple of years. So first of all, do you think that 3 years is enough? But if you would also then think about what should be put in our committee report about how we could ensure that people do apply within the first 3 years? Like, you know, what sort of communication strategy, for example? Any thoughts on the 3 years and how people could be encouraged to apply within that period?
I personally think 3 years is sufficient enough.
Okay.
But if it seems as if more people are starting to come forward within those 3 years, then maybe extend it another wee bit, see
There's
how
a
it
clause for
goes,
that, okay.
and then maybe see step by step.
Okay. Any thoughts on how we can make sure that people know about the scheme?
Advertising.
Look, I mean, we have people there again. There's some birth mothers that are 70, 75 years old and adoptees, like now, they're getting older, like, you know. Don't want to have to say that, sorry about that, have folks there, maybe that you're there, but you are.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah, and I've lost my track there, you got me off the track. Yeah, no, I really think, you know, that, you know, people need to be told through the newspapers, through the radio. Not everybody has social media. I'm not even that great on it myself. But yeah, I think there needs to be, I really do think there should be something else, like there should be like a, I'm going to say this, a roadshow. If you understand what I'm saying, there needs to be some advertisement that we're going to be in your area. Should it be in a Skillen? I mean, I'm sure you know where Balcoo is, and them kind of places, like they're up in the heart of
In the sticks.
of Fermanagh. I mean, there's very few people up there that know them areas. And if you were to kind of go to that place and say, we're going to be here, people will come. Yeah. People will come.
Okay, go ahead, Brian. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mechelle and Oonagh, again for coming in and for all the representation you're making for yourselves and other people. Can you just clarify for me, most of the people who you're supporting and involved with, would they be through mother and baby institutions, or some involved in Magdalene Laundries, and are some involved in workhouses? Would you predominantly one of those?
There's a small number of, mostly mother and baby institutions, but yeah, there's a small number from, you know, the Magdalene Laundry. And we have a few people that engage with us too that were born in private nursing homes. Right. Mm-hmm. And we can see their pain. You know, I mean, their pain is there as well.
Right. The reason I'm asking is I do feel the section that is weakest in the bill is around the workhouses.
Yeah.
And not everyone, it seems to me, who is a relevant person at paragraph 4 is an eligible person at paragraph 31. And it's something we need to probe with the department, with the officials. So someone can be down as a relevant person, but not an eligible person when it comes to the redress. And in the relevant person for the workhouses, I think it's if they were a pregnant woman and who gave birth, or was a child who was born in the workhouse. So I don't know whether you've looked into that section. I feel that's the workhouses need greater work, and they're not even listed in the sections of institutions. There might be one, but there's an absence there of definition.
The workhouses, if I may say, whenever this whole thing started up, it was all about the mother and baby institutions. What we knew about, what I knew about, Mechelle knew about, what others knew about. Then we had added institutions, and the workhouses was one of them. And yes, that really has only really come into light in the last few years. In fact, like, I mean, if we had have known that all these institutions were going to be included, we certainly would have been doing a lot more homework on that. And now that we have an inquiry, we are left, as you say, with very little information about the workhouses. That hasn't been expanded out there. There's very few people even know that this is even happening. People that were in institutions, mother and baby institutions, they don't even know. I mean, every day we're meeting people and saying, I never heard of this. I don't know what's happening. I have such and such a one. And I know they were in a mother and baby institution. So yes, it's very early days for the workhouses. It's very early days for any of them other institutions, the laundries as well. We believe, a lot of them people would be a lot older, that were in the workhouses, and a lot of them would be dead. But certainly we're willing to help in any way we can to get more information on the workhouses and bring it back to you before this inquiry even starts.
Yeah, no, Brian, that's a good point. I was speaking to the clerk and the assistant clerk this morning on that very issue about this issue. You put it well there. They're a relevant person, but they're not an eligible person. So I think it is something we need to look at. Listen, ladies, thank you very much. I think we're just going to close this for now. Obviously, there'll be a wee bit of follow-up with yourselves, but thank you so much. We have 2 more sessions this afternoon here in oral evidence, and I'm sure we'll be in touch with you again. Okay, thank you. Members, we're just going to take a 5-minute comfort break, if that's okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. So we're just going to move on to our next session. Okay, and just again seek your agreement for Hansard to record this session.
Great. Chair, could I
ahead,
just
please.
ask, are you doing a recap at the end of this?
Yes, sorry, should have said any of the sort of queries, for example, for the Executive Office on our own sort of threads. So we'll do
making the note of them.
We're making a note.
Sorry, I know this is in the work programme. When's the officials next in on the bill? That's what I...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Claire.
We don't have a specific date for when they will be here.
It was like to be but I mean...
We can ask them up whenever we wish, if there are specific things. Obviously, as we move on throughout the committee process, they will become more and more involved, but we can ask them to attend it at any time.
So the reason I'm asking is it's best to get the officials in by now or by maybe next week or the week after. We're going to get a sense of what clauses will need amended, and I'd rather get them in earlier and give them a chance to work on it and then come back to us rather than all getting left at the last minute. That's just my own view.
Leave that with us.
Okay, leave that with the clerk and his team. Okay. Well, thank you. So our third session today, we're going to hear from Truth Recovery NI, and members, I'm going to refer you to pages 409 to 410 of your pack for the initial statement on the bill from Truth Recovery NI, and for a written submission on pages 411 to 412. So welcoming to the meeting today, we've got Maria Arbuckle and Paul McClarey, both from Truth Recovery NI. So thank you both for coming. I know you're familiar with this committee, but obviously this is a really important day today, and we thank you for making a submission in advance. We have agreed amongst ourselves that if a question's been asked, we're not going to repeat it because we don't want to keep dragging things out. But if you would like to go ahead and make a few opening remarks on the bill. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So perhaps if I could open and I just declare an interest, as I am a victim and survivor rep on the independent panel, but I'm here today in my capacity as a victim survivor and a member of the steering group of TRNI. Can I also apologise? I hope you can hear me. My voice is sadly leaving me. I suppose that is a consequence of the lifelong trauma that many victims and survivors have suffered. There are serious health issues for many of us. So Truth Recovery NI is one of the 3 main support groups. You've already heard evidence from Oonagh, Mechelle, and Adele and Barbara are coming later from the other support group. We have 126 members, consisting mainly of children, now adults, birth mothers and laundry survivors. They're all active members. We run residentials which are supported by way of trauma, giving individuals an opportunity to support and grow with each other. Many of us have become good friends. Many of our group do not attend the Consultative Forum, but they equally have agency and a voice in this process, and we welcome the committee's invitation to hear our voice. It would be churlish of me not to acknowledge and recognise the work of officials in getting this draft legislation to the place that it is in currently. Equally, I acknowledge the commitment of the First and Deputy First Minister in accelerating the passage of this draft legislation. We had urged them to act with speed, recognising the age and health of many victims and survivors across our community, and they responded, and we welcome that. There are many aspects of this legislation we fully support. We support the mechanisms that would allow other institutions, private nursing homes, and whatever else would be uncovered if evidence is uncovered by the independent panel or the inquiry to be included. We support the scope and the structures, and we welcome that there will be a benefit discount in terms of any redress payment that would be made. Like birth mothers and their children for justice, we cannot support any legislation that would ask for the inclusion of the entire adoption system. I'd now hand you over to Marie.
Hi everybody. Thank you for letting us come in to do this. You know, I'm not very articulated, so I'm going to give it to you from the hips here. So I want to raise some critical concerns with this bill. First, Clause 2, Part 1. In 2021, we were told the inquiry would be victim and survivor led, yet we had no shaping in this bill, and now we're being left out of the terms of reference for the inquiry. How can you claim to speak for us if we're not even in the room? Second, Clause 1, Part 6. People who were fostered out from institutions under the HIA remit did not receive any address for their time spent in foster care. That is a justice that can't be ignored. I done an interview in BBC Good Morning Ulster with Chris Buckler, and it was about my files and about my time in foster care. And I wanted to set up a new inquiry, and we're going back to 2022 here. And Phil Scratton was asked, and I think he's got the letter. Have you got it in front of you? That I got back from Phil Scratton, but he also came on the radio and says that we would be included with the pathways and practices. Now, the pathways and practices in this bill are only for people that was born under the mother and baby institutions, the Magdalene Laundries, and the Workhouses. We're not included. On the first set of institutions, the Nather's House was in there. Now it's not in there. So if it went from that, we would be included. But because that's been taken out now, the actual Nather's House in Derry, I know that it was under the HIA, but the pathways and practices from it wasn't under the HIA, and I've got that as proof as well, which says I was placed with a foster family, and it was there that I was subject to serious sexual abuse, which is beyond and outside the Redress Board remit, and that's from the HIA. That was on my... The panel found this a difficult case to evaluate because most of the serious abuse happened here away from the institutions. However, there's no doubt her period in care was traumatic for her. So it proves they weren't, and now they're going to be left out of here as well, which I don't think is fair. Third, Clause 3, Part 1. The bill leaves it to the independent panel to decide which pathways and practices to bring in from any other institutions, but the report itself in 2021 is clear. All pathways and practices should apply. Nothing less is acceptable. 4, Clause 7. The requirement of impartiality means no victim or survivor can sit in the inquiry panel. That strips away lived experience and accountability, and it undermines public confidence in this process. On redress, the bill proposes 2011 as the posthumous cut-off date. It's wholly inadequate. The real date should be 1922, when the first mother and baby institution in Northern Ireland opened up. Anything else denies nearly a century of abuse and systemic neglect, but Paul will talk more about that. On the posthumous claims, the bill allows only the spouse and the children of the deceased mothers to claim. But what about the children who died? There's none. No claim for them. Many of them never lived long enough to have a spouse or children of their own. We're a big advocate for a sibling to claim for a deceased sibling, especially as many of the deceased siblings died as children and therefore have no family in the descending line. We have an equal right to be they have an equal right to be acknowledged by a token of payment of redress. How else will the state recognise them as named individuals who suffered equally to those currently eligible? Many of those deceased children who made it to adulthood struggled with identity, depression and maintaining relationships, therefore not having families of their own. And I know this because my brother, and he'd gone to the doctors, every test was done, and the doctor actually called his wife in, and the doctor says to her, subconsciously, he doesn't want to bring a child into what he had gone through. Their siblings should be able to apply for the token financial recognition of $2,000 for them as named effective individuals. Why should they be excluded? Also under this bill, birth mothers are unable to apply for the posthumous £2,000 for their deceased birth child. That is also wrong. What if a birth mother has searched for years for her adopted child only to find when they find out that they're deceased? We ask you, do not close the door on those voices, those lives and that truth. Last but not least, the workhouses being excluded from the standard payment. Why? They have the least survivors, they're the oldest survivors, and by the time the inquiry's done, they'll probably all have passed away. Make it make sense, please, why they're left out. Yeah, it's me.
So if I could just finish, and I'd like to bring our opening statement to a close and talk specifically about the date of which a posthumous claim on behalf of a deceased relative can be made as it stands on the face of the draft bill, the 29th of September 2011. I am an affected person, and many of us are disappointed that despite our collective efforts, we have been unable to persuade TEO to change that date. Let me be unambiguous and crystal clear. Many of us believe that date should be 1922. We have simply been ignored by officials, our voices silenced. This is particularly alarming as officials were well aware of our concerns. Before this draft legislation in front of you was prepared, TEO brought forward policy details to the Consultative Forum. These included a proposed date of November 2021, which was the date at that time that the First and Deputy First Minister accepted the recommendations of the Truth Recovery Acknowledgement Report. That was the date they brought forward in the policy proposal. This was met with considerable outrage and hurt by a broad spectrum of victims and survivors. As a result, survivor groups got together and mobilised themselves to take some action to voice their concern. At a subsequent meeting last year, I read a statement expressing collective frustration at this date and walked out of the Consultative Forum meeting. In solidarity, many others, victims and survivors, walked out too, including leading members of well-established support groups. I was moved and struck by the collective sense of solidarity around this particular issue. Many victims and survivors not directly affected could still see the injustice. There then followed a 12-week public consultation on the draft legislation, launched on the 27th of June 2024, the results of which were published in January 2025. 245 individuals and 24 groups or organisations responded. A consultation base of 269 respondents, 91% agreed there should be posthumous claims. 60% disagreed that the posthumous date, November 2021, should be used as a basis for posthumous claims. And I will quote directly from the consultation paper. A majority disagreed with using an acknowledgement announcement as a basis for posthumous claims. Of these, most felt there should be no date at all, or it should be back to 1922 to align with the inquiry's period of investigation. What is the point in asking the question when you don't listen to the answer? It is clear, however, that some effort was made to move the date as it was moved from November 2021 to September 2011 as it appears before us now. What happened to? Most felt there should be no date at all, or it should be back to 1922 to align with the inquiry's period of investigation. This ham-fisted attempt to appease us has caused more harm. We now have a situation where victim survivors whose deceased relatives are now in the posthumous date are carrying guilt and shame because many others are still excluded. Trauma-informed decision-making? Absolutely not. Our voices remain ignored, and a date clearly can be moved. The only justification on this proposal date that I can see when I look through the papers is based on finances, saving a few quid. How insulting to the memory of our loved ones. How is it fair and just that we have draft legislation in front of us, one part dealing with the inquiry, that would allow posthumous evidence to be presented to the public inquiry on behalf of someone deceased before 2011, contributing to the aggregated truth and recommendations that very panel might make. Yet, yet the second part of that draft legislation dealing with redress would not allow a posthumous claim to be made on behalf of that person whose evidence could be submitted. Where's the justice in that proposition? Is that fair? Is that equality? Is that the right thing to do? If my mother was alive today, she would be 80 years old. She would be eligible for a standardised payment, but because she died in February 1975, aged 29 years old, she is excluded. Her life, in my view, means nothing. Let Hansard record her name, Kathleen Veronica Purcell, wee Katie, my mum. She left school aged 15 years old and went to work in a shirt factory in Derry. She was raised by her maternal grandmother, as her own mother was in McAleer and claimed by social services to be a prostitute. A social worker wrote in a report she was shown little love or affection. I have recently uncovered a paternity statement. I'm going to read some details of that. A paternity statement she wrote describes that Katie and a friend visited the home of a 40-year-old married man while his wife was on holiday. She had just turned 18, and he had sex with both girls. Her friend was 20. She went on to say in that statement, "This was my mother. I think the people who owned the cafe in Derry knew I was going out with him." In her eyes, a boyfriend. In reality, a predator. A vulnerable young girl, like many in that city who were preyed upon. Pregnant, she went to Marionville on the Ormo Road. After I was born, she was transferred directly to St Mary's Laundry on the Ormer Road site for what we believe was further punishment for having a mixed race child. She entered the Mother and Baby Institution in November 1963 and left the Laundry in June 1964. She tried in vain to keep her son. He was in a children's home in Derry, but was forced to give me up for adoption in May 1965. She was assessed for special needs in June 1965 and found to have the mental age of a 12-year-old. Yet no one in social services questioned the fact that she could not have had the mental capacity to sign and fully understand the adoption consent she had signed 1 month earlier. An event in itself which lacked any informed consent, as she was taken from the shirt floor factory to the boss's office and then into a local shop where a justice of the peace worked to sign the consent form for my adoption. Latterly,
we've only got 45 minutes.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm almost finished.
Okay, thank you.
Latterly, her life descended into a spiral, heavily dependent on alcohol. She lurched from hostel to hostel, finally being homeless and dying as a result of burns in a homeless squad in 1975. 29 tragic years, failed by family, failed by religious orders, failed by social services, and failed by the state. Who would have believed that 50 years exactly later after her death, she would be failed again by the very institutions of state who are supposed to be delivering truth and justice? And in closing, I have one question. Will you fail Katie? Will you fail all the other mums and their children, the brothers and sisters that we have lost before 2011? Or will you use your influence and your vote to make her life matter and to recognise them?
Okay, thank you. Sorry to rush it all.
You're okay.
We've got people who will be wanting to ask you about some of the stuff around your thoughts on the wording of the bill. Maria, I wanted to pick up on your concerns around you've had no role in shaping the bill. So do you feel that the consultation up till now has not been sufficiently inclusive? And is there anything else that we as a committee can do? Obviously we're hearing your evidence today, but is there anything else that we should be doing to make sure that you feel a sense of ownership of the bill and this process?
Well, the whole way through the consultation we've been saying it, we haven't been inclusive. They don't include us on anything. We sit there and we're like wee puppets to them. But this bill, literally we said, there was a meeting. Mechelle was 10 minutes, first deputy was, First Minister was 10 minutes late, Deputy Minister was later than that again. They literally had 5 minutes each and rushed out of the room. They took this bill in the chambers and we still didn't know what was exactly in the bill. Yeah. We didn't read it afterwards.
So I want to pick up on another part there of what you said, and that was around the clause around the requirement for impartiality. And there is a clause in the bill around the potential establishment of an advisory panel, and I'm just wondering how you would feel about that in terms of how that might muddy the water between those people who want to advise the judges and the sort of the legal team, but also want to ensure that they make sure their own voice is heard. So have you any thoughts on the advisory panel?
Yeah, they did say about victim and survivors on the advisory panel, but why would they not be on the panel? They're the ones with the lived experience of it. Right. So would you not be better with somebody that has that experience?
Okay.
I think the justification for not having victims and survivors on the panel seems to be, and it's actually quite insulting, that you wouldn't have obviously religious orders there, which is understandable, but to equivocate victims and survivors in the same way as the perpetrators of these crimes, yeah. That's a great word, seems a little bit unjust.
Okay. I was just checking the wording of the bill there in terms of clause 31, entitlement to a payment. I'm just not sure how to read it myself, and that's around, you've mentioned there about mothers of deceased children. So my reading of it, and I might be wrong, that's why I'm sort of putting it out there for Hansard. So subsection 5 says that if you were eligible on subsection 2 or 4, in other words, if you were a mother or you were a child, you'd be eligible for the deceased person's payment. So would that not bring in mothers of deceased children?
I think it's in relation to the posthumous specifically. It is our interpretation that as that legislation sits or is proposed, it would mean that a birth mother could not apply for a deceased child.
Okay.
It would be the adopted mother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the birth mother wouldn't be classed as its mother.
Okay.
But why shouldn't
No, I
the
totally
person
agree.
who gave birth to the child?
Yeah, I think
That's what we're trying
yeah.
to say, yeah.
Okay.
And it also means that siblings.
And so,
It can
so
make an
if
application.
if the mother's dead and the child's dead,
Yeah.
then can the siblings, because the mother's children's allowed to go for the mother, so why shouldn't the siblings be allowed to go for the child?
Yeah, no, I know. No, I really appreciate that. I hadn't really thought of it from the siblings' point of view until you submitted your testimony. Go ahead, please, Deputy Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. And again, thank you very much for your incredibly powerful contribution to us today. Can I tease out with you, you made reference to concerns around widening this out into the adoption system as well, but clearly children who were adopted were also, in some circumstances, equally subjected to abuse and other things that happened to them. And I have a concern that there may even have been collusion between those institutions that placed children into adoption and that they knew what was going to happen to the child when they were placed into adoption. So could you tease out for us just a little more your concerns around widening this out to cover areas of adoption?
I think our primary concern is based on the fact that if you have too wide a lens, there's a real danger in our view that you would fail to fully investigate what is required. In some respects, whilst they are potentially live issues, it dilutes truth and justice for many of us. And if there are things about the wider adoption system, then that's an investigation or inquiry in our view for another day. Okay. However, as you suggest, and we do know there are people on the margins, we are satisfied that there is provision within this legislation to allow entry for them should evidence be uncovered.
And the other question I'd like to ask you about is, I think concern has been raised that the legislation doesn't cover all of the circumstances or all of the institutions that it lists 11.
Yeah.
But I think we're all aware that there are many other places and spaces where either mothers were placed or children were placed. So can you assist us by providing us with what you have from the people that you're working with, names of places and institutions that you believe should be added to the list?
Well, there was a list and I just can't find it and I can't remember. I think it was in, so we had the report, but then we had another booklet with the report, and I think the list was in there, and it was a bigger list than this one now that's in the bill, right? And that had a lot of places in it compared to the one that's gone into the bill now, but I can't remember. I'm sure it's in the, what was the other fold?
I can't report.
So we got, do you remember we got the report and then there was another booklet?
The wee explanatory booklet, is that what you mean?
Might have been that one.
It sort of sat inside, it sort of came together.
No, not the bill, not the bill.
I don't say it sat inside it.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, it sat inside the report and that had a longer list on it.
And just very briefly, finally, Chair, is there any evidence, or are you aware, or any of the people that you've been working with, of any evidence of what might be described? So we've talked about the list that's in the legislation, we've talked about the potentially a wider list of maternity homes and other places. Is there any evidence of what might be described as informal arrangements for mothers to be taken in small communities and small villages where a person, predominantly a woman, would have taken maybe 2 or 3 girls in to the time when they had their baby? So I'm looking about informal
There was in
spaces.
Belfast, wasn't there? There was Malone House or Malone Square or something it was called.
I think so. Yeah.
So, but
Even,
that,
even
the
le-
independent
even less,
panel
even
is
less
good.
formal than that. That families knew if you went to a certain person, she could take in 2 or 3 pregnant women.
That's the independent panel's working on that, so they should have the list of it all.
Okay. But I think
To
we
bring
just
it
want
forward.
to make sure that what we hear and in terms of any amendments that we will bring to legislation, that it will be as open and as encompassing as possible. I don't want to restrict things. I want to ensure that we bring everybody in.
Well, that's what we've wanted, inclusive, all along.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Carol, please.
Thank you for coming. It's not easy. So just to give you assurance, we don't want to fail anyone. We absolutely want to use this process where amendments need to be made, they're made, and they're made on the basis of lived experience and all that across the board. Now, whether it'll be accepted or not, it's a different story. But just to say, that's the case. In your own experience, even working on this for years, this trauma, and working with other people who are living with the trauma and will live with the trauma and probably die with the trauma. In relation to, there was a suggestion at one of the panels earlier that while many on the list inside the bill are the religious orders, it doesn't cover them all. And I would like to explore further the work between the religious orders, because we've been told before that while they were separate in terms of religion, they work together on these issues in terms of exporting babies and all the rest. So in terms of people, survivors, victims and survivors, and particularly those who maybe came from other institutions or homes that weren't mentioned, what have they been involved in this process, even in terms of coming forward? Because these are both on the, we're on the consultative forum, and even just all the discussions you have had with each other in the build up to this. Are they aware that this process is going on as well?
Yeah, I mean, we have members from the Salvation Army, Thorndale House, but not in the same numbers.
Okay.
As we would have from the Catholic religious orders. But there are people out there who are involved with us.
We also have one living member from the Workhouses,
Yeah.
and he actually lives in America.
Yeah.
And to me, I don't see why he should be failed, why he should be left out. Like, he's 89 now.
Yeah.
89, right? My grandmother was in a workhouse. We haven't found that child yet, so we don't even know whether they're living or dead now. Like, so the one under her is 87. Him, we don't even know it's a boy or girl yet. So I'm getting DNA tested to see if we can get some kind of match that we don't know about, to see if that's the connection then.
And that DNA testing's all done from your own pocket, is it?
No, well, we've done a pilot scheme.
Right, okay.
So they says that I can be involved in it now.
Good. Okay. And just finally, I mean, there's plenty of clauses here which each of us, I mean, everybody's unanimous in trying to get stuff, which is really good for committees. But there's certainly clauses here that we're asking the officials to amend. The posthumous date has come up, I think, with every presentation. So it's just to say that to you. And just we'll do our best to ensure that this bill, as much as we can, is more reflective of.
Well, the thing is, we could have easily have gone back to the 1800s, because that's when the workhouses opened, and the last workhouse closed in 1948.
Yes.
So like 22, I think, is a good year then in between them dates. Because you are saying it's the Laundries, the Workhouses, and the mother and baby homes. So if you're taking it that way, we're actually buying sort of in the middle there. With 22. But and something you were saying there as well. So my case, my personal case, is sort of different because I grew up in care all my life, so I had no parents, and it was the nuns of the children's home. Well, it wasn't even a children's home; it was a training school. But I hadn't committed a crime, and I was in a training school. That sent me, but they sent me down to Dublin to have the baby. But then came to Dublin and picked the baby up and brought him back to the north to get adopted. So,
Child trafficking?
Well, the Gardaí has said there's no criminal activity. The PSNI now has just come back with no criminal activity. And they says, how can I say it's child trafficking? And I says, well, back in that day you couldn't even bring butter, alcohol or washing powder up over the border. But these nuns could bring babies up and down over the border. Some in the car parks getting paid for them. But hey, oh, that's a difference.
Really good point you made there at the end. Thank you. Sinead?
Thank you.
Sinead, please. Thanks.
Very good analogy, that's right, and thank you so much for your testimonies today, and very powerful. We talked with the other evidence that we got earlier on. How can we best ensure that there's really meaningful engagement? Because you both spoke passionately that you felt that there wasn't meaningful engagement in the writing of this bill as it was. So
there was none, Sinead. None.
But what could we do now, or what could happen now, just to ensure that you feel that there has been meaningful engagement in this process as we are entering into now in terms of the evidence and the consultation and the committee stage of this bill? Because we don't want you to feel that this hasn't worked for you either. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I'm totally expecting, to be quite honest with you, to be left out of it anyway. Right now, I'm getting too old in the tooth now to start a new inquiry for the foster care system. Right, I did ask it in 2022. I'd have been 3 years on that by now. But what you're doing today, engaging with us. But please listen. Don't sit here and say, we understand, and then just walk away and do nothing about it. That's what I mean. So with the TO, listen, they're a great bunch of guys, really, if you get them one by one and they're okay. But don't sit and tell us that you're listening to us and then go behind our back and do something else. And that's exactly what that bill was.
Yeah, sorry.
Go on. Go.
No.
Your voice mightn't hold out to the end. You go ahead.
I think, Sinead, this community lacks trust, understandably so. So when we hear things like, and we're unhappy, as I described, the policy consultation, and we expressed, oh, don't worry, there'll be a public consultation. We were sceptical. This is a cosmetic exercise. And when results, particularly on posthumous, are so heavy that what they're proposing is wrong, the majority of people say no data 1922, and then they ignore that. They don't listen to that. That creates more mistrust, and that's the situation we're in. So what could you do as a committee? You could make and effect some change for us.
That day that bill was brought in, it was basically like a kick in the teeth. It was like, you know what, you've sat in this consultation for 3 years and it wasn't worth anything. You're sitting there.
Yeah.
Basically.
Is there other support that you need now at this stage?
The structures and mechanisms in our view that are there already, the Consultative Forum in our view is in disarray. It's very toxic. It clearly is not delivering. And many good people who were involved have moved away from that. And that for me is very sad because they have a voice and a powerful voice. and they have lost confidence and faith in the process. The support from WAVE and VSS is very good.
Yeah, it's excellent.
We just need a commitment that would continue. We're always worried that there'll be cuts to that funding. I don't know what you do to build trust again. You know, I don't know how many times we have to answer a question, and when we give an answer, the answer's ignored. How much longer we can take that, to be frank?
A prime example, I stepped back for 6 months. As you all know, my son was murdered, and I took a step back for 6 months. And when I came back after 6 months, the same thing was still going round the table. So it was like you just going in circles and circles, and it's a delay and a delay, and it's like you just get tired at the end of it, and it's like, are we able to trust the government?
Okay, I'm conscious of 2 more before we close this. Timothy, please.
Maria, just a quick question. You had said you expect to be excluded because you're from the foster system. How many people do you think that will affect? Have we underestimated how many people that will rule out, and is there a need for an inquiry, a focus put on those that have been in the foster care system in the future?
The foster care system is a big system, because if you think in them children homes, I'll give you an example for the Nathers house. So every child that was in the Nathers house in Derry, I don't know about the one in Belfast, I only know the one in Derry. Every summer, them kids were sent out to foster families. And they were just taken off the streets, basically. When the nuns would round with the bands, they'd say, "Oh, do you want a kid for the summer?" Because the place was getting painted. Every summer it got painted. So them kids were just put out into all different kinds of families, all around the Northern Ireland, basically. So you're talking about that children's home that was full of them.
How many would that be?
I don't know how many that actually held. I literally have no memory of that place. My memory is from my sisters. There was 9 of us, and the oldest one, Demise, was 11 years older than me. So I have all their memories of it. 2 of them ended up in the Laundries, which was a pathways and practices from the Nathers house again. But they're going to be included anyway. And this is the thing. In Derry, there wasn't many mothers from the Laundries in Derry. Not a lot of girls in there give birth to children. It seemed to be more in Belfast, didn't it? Rather than in Derry.
You're certainly into the thousands, I would have thought.
Many?
In the thousands, I would have thought. And there will be institutional records too, there must be.
Yeah. Well, all we ever got was one sheet of paper saying the day we went in and the day we went out. It doesn't say what went on in between. It doesn't say, like, she went to foster family for the 6 weeks of summer because we were getting the place painted. It won't say that in the records. No. But that's what happened. Like, my sisters all remember the names of the families, everything that they went to. There's one of my sisters went to the same family forever, and she was never adopted by them. She never actually lived in their house. She only went there during the summers and that. And she calls them mum and dad. She still to this day calls them mum and dad, and like she's 65.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you. Brian, please.
Thank you, Chair. The bill will establish the inquiry at the same time, hopefully, as a redress scheme, because time is a factor. You know, I don't know, have you had time to read the university report in 2021? And would you have any comments on things that you particularly felt were not delved into in that report that you hope an inquiry would be able to uncover or explore?
Yeah, for me, I suppose the understanding of the lifelong trauma of the babies and we call ourselves Now Children, Now Adults, was not fully explored in the academic report. The focus was institutional focus and the experience rightly of birth mothers. So I think that's a huge area, and certainly in our network,
That is true.
that's been a theme that has come more. The narrative, which is wrong from personal experience, that these babies will have a good life, is sadly untrue. That trauma stays with you.
And the other thing is they've no memory because they were too young.
Exactly.
Which that isn't right either, because from the minute you get pregnant, and every woman in here will understand this, when you go to the doctor, they say don't get stressed, it'll harm the baby. So the minute a mother puts her foot into one of them institutions, that baby was under the stress that she was under. And that will always come out in the baby, even in later life, even if they had the best life in the world, psychologically, they're damaged. They live with abandonment, rejection. You could, Paul, help me.
Addiction, etc., etc.
Yeah.
One other question. Have we got time?
Very quickly, please. We're conscious of other panel.
And I want to thank you both for your personal testimonies today and all that you've told us, and just acknowledge that. Just wanted to ask too, in terms of compensation from the relevant institutions, obviously the state will be paying out here in the first place, again because of the timescale. Is it important to you that institutions themselves ultimately pay compensation?
Definitely, in my eyes. Definitely they should. But the state and the religion wasn't cahoots with each other. So we can't say one's to blame more than the other, because who paid for the girls to be in them institutions? I didn't pay for myself, I know that. So somebody paid for me. Who paid for me? It had to be the state. Right? Who paid for the babies in the holding? Like the Nather's house was a holding, Fawn was a holding. Who paid for them babies in there? The babies didn't pay for themselves. The state paid for it. The religion order kept them in there. The religion order treated the women cruelly, treated the babies cruelly. So they're both to blame, as far as I'm concerned. And they should both pay equally. Listen, no matter how much money you give us, it's never going to change our lives. So to see this 10 grand thing, I couldn't give a damn whether it's 10 grand, really, right? I don't care about inflation or anything. I've never had money all my life, so I don't care about it. The thing is about it, there's people who do care how much they get or about that money, and that's their prerogative, right? If they think that 10 grand isn't enough for an intimate payment, fair play, then they need to fight that cause. I don't want to fight that cause, because to me, money's nothing to me.
Okay, thank you both. I think you've maybe read from some notes that we maybe didn't get in our pack. So if there's anything you want to share with the committee after, we'd really appreciate it.
I did send it through to you.
Oh no, don't worry, don't worry. We'll make sure that whatever you've sent through, we can circulate. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
your
so
time.
much, Shirley.
Thank you.
Okay. Members, will you take your ease just for a wee minute? I think that we've asked for the next panel to come down from the other room, so we'll just maybe set the next one up and then we'll just take our ease for a wee minute. So this will be our last of 4 panels today, and it will be with the birth mothers and their children together. So I'm going to refer you to pages 414 of the pack for the initial statement on the bill. And also then pages 415 to 417 of your pack for a written submission from the birth mothers and their children together. So if you want to get those up in your pack while we wait for the witnesses to arrive. Thank you.
And is there a lot of information we simply won't get? Is that the experience from doing something else?
I was trying to ask you.
He's part of the actions at the end.
Yes.
A couple of people have come back and said there was definitely cross-working with the institutions. You know, I mean, like divvying babies out and stuff like that.
Mrs. Jones.
I mean, I think we need to
explore that a bit more. Okay, members. Excuse me, Deputy Chair, thank you. Thank you. Okay, welcome, ladies. Today we have Adele Johnston and Barbara McCann, both from the Birth Mothers and their Children Together. So thank you so much for your submissions and everything you have done up to this point to sort of support this committee in terms of gathering the evidence we need. I'm going to invite you to make some opening remarks, if that's okay, and then we'll open up for questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen. Birth Mothers and their Children Together represent a group of birth mothers and adopted or foster children, now adults. We also have birth mothers who were able to get their children back from the foster care and some descendants of birth mothers now deceased. We may have very different lived experiences, but we do have a common goal, and that is to achieve truth, justice and acknowledgement of what happened to us and our loved ones. The proposed draft bill falls very short of these expectations, and the recommendations of the Truth, Acknowledgement and Accountability Report of October 21. The recommendations were accepted in full by the then First and Deputy First Ministers Paul Givan and Mechelle O'Neill at the Stormont Hotel where we were present. We have endured months of meetings, questionnaires. We have bared our souls giving our testimonies to the independent panel and engaged with the public consultation, only to be herded into a room and dealt one body blow after another when the draft bill was introduced. It appeared that we had not been listened to, and the draft bill seemed instead to be more based on cost cutting than implementing the hard fought for recommendations of the Truth, Acknowledgement and Accountability Report. We have not been listened to throughout this process, and there is no acknowledgement of the state-sanctioned hurt and abuse which we all suffered. That's my opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and again thank you for putting that all in writing. So I'm just going to pick up on a couple of points you made in your submission, please, Adele, and that was really about the posthumous date. I would like you to sort of talk to the impact that had on your group whenever you saw that on the face of the bill, and if you have any proposals for what you think it should be. Thank you.
Well, when they proposed the date of September 29th, 2011, that is an arbitrary date tied completely to the unrelated historical institutional child abuse inquiry. And that inquiry excluded us on the level of age. The under 5s were disbarred and the over 18s were. And there's no rational justification for this date, and really we view it as cost cutting. We have looked at as a group, we have looked at different other ramifications. Some people would like to stick to the 1922, but there's a few of us who have looked at the Ministry of Home Affairs Voluntary Homes Act of 1952. In the mother and baby homes, Magdalene, Laundries in Northern Ireland 22 to 1990 report of January 21, it was pointed out that it had come to light in 1984 that Marionville, Belfast, did not have in place the mandatory system of monthly visiting inspections. Once it was flagged up, the Mother Superior of the Good Shepherd Convent in Belfast then designated herself as visitor. Well, I'm afraid that smacks of the fox, guarding the hen house, and really is not totally acceptable at all. Again, in the report of 21, the HIA admonished the Good Shepherd Sisters, the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Department of Health and Social Services, and the Social Work Advisory Group, and they admonished it for what they identified as a systemic failure on their behalf and a clear dereliction of duty. And after legal advice, this could be challenged on the equality litigation. So that's our view of that date. We're not happy about that date at all.
Okay.
And the impact on that means that our loved ones have just been at the stroke of a pen struck out, that their pain, their suffering, whatever happened to them, is just counts for nothing. And okay, you can have other forms of acknowledgement, but to absolutely strike them off it's cruel, it's callous, and it's not very nice.
Okay, thank you, Adele. So I'm not sure whether you caught the tail end of the last panel there, and it was really at the point that people are coming at this process from different angles, truth, accountability, acknowledgement, etc. But in your submission you do say that the £10,000 standardised payment should really be £15,000 to reflect cost of living, inflationary, and even winter fuel payments being removed in many cases, etc. I'm just wondering, why is the acknowledgement, the redress payment, important to yourselves, and why do you think that it should be more than HIA? Please.
Well, HIA was 9-10 years ago that was acknowledged, and the figure was set down. A lot of things have changed since then, and a lot of our members and other people who belong to other groups and don't belong to groups are in that older age category. And to have a sum of money that they can maybe put towards a wee bit of comfort in their old age is very important, or maybe even to put a gravestone up on their loved one's grave. That's important because it's acknowledging that these people existed. Yes, the argument can be made that you can make the individually assessed payment, but given the age and the health of a lot of our people, that's not going to happen. I mean, I personally am 73. If I go through this process, and this process lasts another 5-7 years, realistically, am I going to start and go through a psychological assessment? Am I going to put myself through that? Maybe by that time I might have dementia, I might be in a home, I don't know. I mean, hopefully I'll not, but at the moment I'm quite compos mentis, but that might not continue. And that's the people that we're speaking for, the people who cannot come forward. I mean, at the weekend I was speaking to one adoptee whose birth mother is going through terminal cancer. She's not going to be around to do the individually assessed. She needs a little bit of help now, and that's why I feel that this really should be pushed and an amendment made of that sum.
Thank you. I suppose just a quick question, we're bringing the Deputy Chair, and that was the issue around the relevant persons in terms of the inquiry, and it's this issue about the importance to hear the man's voice, the father's voice at the public inquiry stage, because in many cases the birth certificate put down the father was unknown and stuff. I'm just wondering if you have any views in terms of whether they should be given more prominence, or whether there are any other groups of relevant persons who you feel that the bill doesn't cover. Thank you.
That's a rather difficult question for me personally, because the father of my child run to the hills and never was seen again. So I definitely would not like him having any prominence. I know there were some men who tried to step forward and unfortunately couldn't, and I really don't feel in a position to answer that. Other relevant persons, I do think that children or women who were in a place other than a mother and baby institution and give birth to a child when there, that needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis, and I think that needs to be looked at further. Just to arbitrarily dismiss them is not really because they were in a private nursing home or they were in another place. Those children were taken, and there was a clear pathway through to some of the children's homes, which are not even mentioned in this bill. And that's another question that we actually are very annoyed about, that those places are not listed. We want to see St Joseph's Babies Home, we want to see Connie Warren, we want to see Nazareth, and we want them listed in this bill. And that is causing a lot of distress among my colleagues, and we were away at the weekend and this was a big topic of discussion.
Okay, I'll maybe hand over to Deputy Chair because I know there's somebody's interested.
Yeah, this is the question I've been asking everybody today. I think we need help from you and all of the organisations to try and identify those additional places. There are 11 listed here in the legislation, but we know there are other places. Some who I think it would be fairly easy to directly put in and deal with, but I think there are others that we need to get more information about. And it would be very helpful if you or any members people that you're talking with, if either they have direct knowledge or they know of other people who know about places where they were. And I very much take your point. You know, when was a baby home? When was an orphanage, for want of a better word, actually a mother and baby home? It seems to me that they all worked too closely together.
Yes, it did.
And it was there was a trail of babies and mothers that went through these processes. They were all known to each other. The people who were facilitating this knew each other, whether it was church-based or whether it was state-based, because in the late 1940s, the workhouses transferred to the county councils in Northern Ireland, and they had responsibility for children's homes. But it was quite often one and the same people in the same system.
It was a network.
If you could help us, that would be very, very useful.
We have had some people come forward to the independent panel who have named other different places. Good. And they, unfortunately, as the bill stands, are more or less left out because it was a private home or a private nursing home. And that's why I'm saying it needs to be looked at case by case. Yeah. You can't just say, no, you're out because you weren't in an institution as such. Yeah. And these women went through exactly the same, maybe not for the length of time that we did, but there also was slight differences. But those children were taken and removed and sent into the baby homes. Yes. And that again was the pathway. Absolutely. And that needs to be really looked at very closely.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Sinead, please.
Thank you. It's good to hear your evidence here today, both of you. How do you think, you referenced in your statement about the cross-border aspect of the institutionalisation of it. How do you think the executive could take forward maybe discussions with the Irish government in and around that? Because we're talking about, you know, the pathways in the border county. The pathways weren't in this jurisdiction, and many times, but it was still the pathway. And you know, it's when we're looking at the list of institutions, they're not listed because they're not in this jurisdiction, but they certainly were where the babies went, for example, in Fawn and Derry, and it was certainly the pathway for it.
Mullins, another place that wasn't mentioned, with the Poor Clares. So although they were a different organisation, they still worked hand in hand. And we do have colleagues who went through that pathway through Stramullen, and that's another that needs to be looked at. And I mean, I think the North-South Ministerial Council needs to be brought in a bit more, and you know, data sharing, because it's a different jurisdiction. Yeah. But it needs to be brought in, and I think there needs to be more correspondence between North and South over this, because the organisations and the institutions did not recognise borders. No. As I heard earlier on, talking about bringing butter and stuff, you couldn't bring a cow or a sheep across the border either without paperwork. And these babies were just put into cars and taken back and forth, and the same with the women back and forth.
Okay, anything else, Sinead?
Oh, sorry. We've talked to all that give evidence today about the importance, in your opinion, that the institutions are compelled to make payment. Can you speak to that? How important is that for you in terms of justice?
I think that's very important. At the moment, the way it sits, to go cap in hand and say, please, can you give me some money? I really don't agree with that. I know nothing can be done until after the public inquiry, when there is proof of wrongdoing, and I take that on board. But I think from then on, there must be some sort of legislation or something put in law to compel. and for them to give up their records for start off, and also to pay restitution for redress, not just for the redress payments, but to provide a wrap-round care package for all victims and survivors moving forward. Because, as I said earlier on, we are all getting older, and we do need a little bit of help and support. We do get it from WAVE, but that costs money. And why should the government, while complicit, the government was complicit, while they were complicit, why should they bear the burden of the whole bill? That portion of that, a portion of that bill needs to go forward to the institutions, to the religious orders, and I mean them all of them that were involved.
Can I ask just one thing? Have you anything that you'd want to add to that, Barbara?
Well, they're all interlinked, and they're all selling off their assets because nothing's been put in place. And if they can hide, and there's nothing, the big, I don't know what you call them, the big churches and everything else, they all know how to hide money. And if they'll hide all these things, and they'll leave it down. If they can leave it to the state to have to pay out whatever has to be paid out and not get anything back, that's what they will do. Which, alongside of this, if something could be put in place, so whenever the inquiry is finished, that it's, no, this is what is happening and this is what you have to do. And that there's no, no hiding places anymore, because that's what this is all about. There's been too many hiding places. As you say, a sheep was valued more going across the border than a baby or a mummy. That's not right. So it's not right that they're allowed to hide their money or whatever, even though their excuse is it was years ago and it wasn't them and nobody is alive that can say this, and we've all read the books, but that's not the point. Sometimes you have to put your hands up and go, yeah, it was us, sorry.
Accountability.
You need accountability. We need truth and accountability, and that's all we're after.
Okay, thank you.
And Brian, please.
Okay, look, you've answered some of the questions I wanted to ask. We are constantly trying to look at the list of institutions, and you referenced the HIA inquiry for historical institutional abuse, which is focused on children who were placed in abusive settings in institutions. So this inquiry and redress scheme is for women, for pregnant women, and their children who were born in those institutions. So can you clarify more about then? You're aware of women who were sent to, are you saying there was women who were sent to, you mentioned St Joseph's baby home?
Babies.
The babies were sent there afterwards?
Yes.
And were they not picked up in the HIA scheme? Is that what you're saying?
No, the under fives. The under fives were not, neither were the over 18s. There were a few birth mothers who got through in the HIA because they were under 18. But the over 18s and the under fives were discounted by Sir Anthony Hart right from the get-go.
Was there a list of eligible institutions in that scheme then, or how were they missed then?
He just discounted them.
Right.
His actual words were that it was too big to look at the baby homes and the HIA and the mother and baby homes. So he broke it down to the ones in the middle, which was the historical institutional abuse inquiry.
Right. Because this will be an admission-based redress scheme, so that that's why I suppose it's necessary to have a list of institutions, and if you were admitted to there.
That's why we need the follow-on ones. We need the follow-on ones because so many mummies had their babies, and the baby was maybe put straight into like Belfast is St Joseph's, other ones it's Nazareth, other ones it's Collymore, others all these places. The mummy maybe had the baby in the hospital, and the baby was maybe transferred straight to one of these, and they were like a stepping stone place where they were adopted from. I know I'm a big baby, but I'm a baby, and I have a brother who's 3 years older than me, and he went from hospital to St Joseph's and was adopted from St Joseph's in Belfast, I went from the mother and baby home in Newry to Belfast and was adopted from St Joseph's in Belfast. You know, they're all kind of shifted and all round, you know.
The birth was in
in
a hospital?
My brother's birth was in the hospital.
Yours wasn't?
Mine wasn't. Mine was at 4 o'clock in the morning. Emergency, didn't even make it over to Daisy Hill across the road. But I think it was because of whatever abuse and whatever treatment my mother got. Because they, with them all being connected, they would have known that she'd already had a baby. So I was her second baby. And she was in there for less than 2 weeks and went into early labour. And I was born 9 weeks early in 1962.
Did you say your brother was adopted?
My brother, I only found out about 3 years ago that an older brother, that he was adopted. And, you know, again, we're not told things.
Yes.
You know, we're lied to or carried or, you know, not told anything. He was adopted from St Joseph's Baby Home, which was then they knew, with the connections, with them all being connected, whenever she went to have the second baby, which was me, in Newry, that they already knew that she'd already had a baby. So she must have had a terrible time. So she was in there less than a fortnight and I was born 9 weeks early.
But that should have been picked up, you know, in the HIA then?
No.
McClarey primarily?
No, because we were under 5. We were both under 5.
Can you explain that again to me?
We were under 5 when I was adopted when I was under 5, and he was adopted when he was under 5. So we weren't in the.
And they were in a baby home
at all, and we were in the baby home.
So the baby homes were not acknowledged.
They weren't acknowledged
In the HIA.
Okay. Thank you. That's important.
Thank you, Brian. Timothy, please. Thank you.
One of my concerns coming out of today is the list of people that will be excluded from this, and that's something that has come through from yourselves again about the private home. One of the things that I'm very clear on what I want to happen is that there's accountability comes from the homes that have carried this out in the institutions. You had mentioned about giving people the records. When we move to phase 2, so you have the payment at the start that acknowledges somebody was in a home, but phase 2 will be a bit more complex and it will relate to somebody's specific circumstances. The information that home may hold will be crucial to somebody having a successful claim on that. So I think that's something very important that we need to try and iron out now. And I completely agree with you that homes need to pay. My concern is that the south was a bit further on. So some of the homes that we're talking about were on the island of Ireland. And if the south government get there first, I hope that means then that we will get a portion of what is due towards the harm that has been carried out here in Northern Ireland. You had mentioned about the £10,000 and you felt that that wasn't reflective. £10,000 in 2015. I don't want to make this a monetary value essentially, but when you brought it up, I'm just interested to know, so 10,000 isn't acceptable. If you put that figure in to the Bank of England and look at the inflation on that, it looks, sitting as of August 2015, it's £13,934. If there was a figure like that, 14,000 was in the legislation as a payment, is that something that then would become acceptable? Because you're seeing...
We, in the public consultation, 54% of those who responded to the public consultation disagreed with the proposal of 10, and they agreed on the amount of 15. That was the figure that was proposed at the public consultation, and they went away and they came back with 10 again.
Is that essentially relating to inflation?
So in other words, they didn't listen to it.
Is that relating to inflation of
Yeah.
what's happened from 2015 to now?
Yeah, that's why we had sort of worked it out to that. It was, did you do with inflation, the cost of living, and as I said, even the winter fuel, being taken away, and it just doesn't measure up. And it's not the monetary value, and it's not just money. It is the acknowledgement. And it needs to be a tangible acknowledgement. Okay, you can have all the seats and all the parks that you want, but brass, hard money put into somebody's hand and given to somebody who can, as I say, put a gravestone up, do something with that money in their last years of their life. without sort of having to pay extra tax or anything like that on it. It's a tangible thing. You can't replace your child, you can't replace your mother, but at least you'll have something that you can do something with, even if you give it to your grandchildren. I know I've discussed that with my own son, and my adopted son, and he said he wasn't sure what to do, and I said, would you take it and give it to my grandchildren who I do not know and who I haven't seen growing up. I have 3 beautiful grandchildren who live in the south of Ireland. I've met them, and it would be the only gift I can give to them, and that's a very personal, feeling for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Carol, please.
All the questions that I wanted were asked. But I just want to say thank you, because this hasn't been easy for you, and we're not done yet. But you can see from some of the questions that we're asking that we're trying to, first of all, honour what came out of consultation, where we can amend and change parts of the bill. But again, we have no guarantee that will happen. Yeah. And I think everybody, just feels a sense of injustice for you all. My own thing is that I'm constantly being told that the private nursing homes, and you described as a network, Barbara. So the private nursing homes, the crossover between the religious orders was almost like fluid. It was like helping each other out, taking babies in, adopting babies out, all that sort of stuff. And we haven't really, we've been told that we've known we need to get more in. And then how do you amend that? How does that reflect in the amendment for the public inquiry to ensure that they dig deeper into it? So it's all those things we're going to try and look at. And everyone's came forward and said the names that are mentioned in the bill are excluding the baby homes and indeed the private nursing homes as well. So thank you.
I just want to point just to pick up on it. I don't want necessarily open the conversation again, but I do want to reference point 14 of your submission there, and that was around clause 31(2)(b). I did raise it with one of the previous panels, and that was really about the reference to the receipt of the prime purpose of admission was for the purpose to receive shelter or maintenance or both. And I think you've just outlined in your submission there that you didn't think that really reflected the punishment, coercion, slavery, cruel, inhumane treatment. So
I really don't. Not even in my mother's case. My mother's case, I never got to meet her by the time I got the address. She had died. But I mean, I survived. I'm here. Not in the best of health. I've never been in the best of health. But I'm here. How many mummies didn't survive, who went through the same thing because for circumstances ended up having, for whatever reason, having a second baby out of as I would have said, no size wedlock, and punished for it.
I just want to acknowledge
the use of language actually is very crucial, and I think sometimes that gets lost. And I mean, to say that was a place of shelter or maintenance, that really galls. Because I know for the majority of women and girls that were institutionalised in these places, it certainly wasn't a place of shelter.
Thank you. Thanks very much, ladies, and say thank you for your submissions up till this point. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members.
Thank you for listening to us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think it was a good call getting our correspondence out of the way earlier. So thanks everybody for coming a wee bit early. Members, just a few last things to go through. We've got the draft forward work programme, so I'm going to refer you to pages 1, 2, 4. No? Oh, sorry. We're going to do a recap on actions. Sorry. Go ahead, please, Clark.
Thanks, Chair. There was a lot that came out of those sessions. I've identified perhaps 11 areas where the committee may wish to ask for further information from the department. I think some of them aren't necessarily related to the bill as such, so we just need to have a think about about which ones aren't and which ones are. But if I read them out, if anybody has anyone that I have missed or wants clarification, please let me know. So there's the question of legal representation for people who will be in front of the inquiry, and what provision there is, or whether there needs to be provision of that in the bill. One that I think is a little bit more difficult to pin down is this whole talk of cross-border movement and almost this network. But I think we can ask the department to provide what information they have on that, and then again that could be something that we could seek perhaps legal advice a little bit further down the line as to how that would work if we were looking to amend to include something that wasn't this jurisdiction.
Can I just jump in at that
Yes.
point? I'm wondering, is there something we need to look at around the Oonagh inquiry, around the Memorandum of Understanding with the Irish Government there? I wonder, is there any similarity, or is there some learning in terms of how that is going and where did, anyway, so just...
Leave that with us, that's fine. And area number 3, compulsion to pay, and again this came up in every session that we have. Just to remind members, the committee requested legal advice on this very subject, and our legal advisor will be with us not next week but the week after to provide the legal advice that we have sought on that. So I think it might be worth just pausing on that one until we've had that legal advice, and then we can take that from there as to how committee would like to move that. Fourth one I had was access to information again, and this relates not only to this part and what the inquiry has the ability to compel on, but I think, Timothy, as you mentioned, it then relates to the next piece of legislation. And when you get to individual redress, then obviously what has been compelled in terms of information now in this one will be extremely important. So again, we can go back to the department on what information they have on that. Finally, number 5 is something that I think Brian had brought up a couple of times, as in a relevant person but not an eligible person. And that relates to number 6, our prescribed list that is currently within the bill.
Could I just comment on that? I mean, the relevant person is in the terms of reference for the inquiry.
Yes.
So it seems to be a bit broader. The eligible people is for entitlement to the redress. But that's a good example that lady
under 5s and over 18s
raised there, Barbara. I hadn't realised the HA inquiry dealt with you have to be 5+. Right. So, and again, I'm looking again at the terms of reference for the inquiry, and it talks about care arrangements, including adoption, fostering, or other arrangements. So, and the whole bill is focused around specifically mother and baby institutions, Magdalene, Laundries, Workhouses, and a prescribed list. And if we end up with at least the inquiry doesn't have to have a sharp edge. I understand the redress scheme, they have to have criteria, and that'll be, a matter of debate and probably votes at some stage. But I think the inquiry needs to at least look at similar arrangements through which the same things were happening. And if it was a case that babies were being born and exactly the same thing of coerced adoptions taking place, that at least needs to be acknowledged in the inquiry. It doesn't need the same sharp line about prescribed institutions only.
And then the other thing I had down was, like a lot of the evidence that we have received, a lot of the victims and survivors, mainly women, refer to 12, 13, 14-year-old girls giving birth. I mean, the inquiry needs to have access to that information, because that's just horrendous. Any girl under the age of 18 is a child and needs to come out, because people are saying we're assuming it was rape or incest, and that in itself, no support, no care, no acknowledgement. So I think we need to try and lift the rug on that one as well.
Chair, if I can add to that, I think I've heard it from today, but in other discussions that I've had, but I do think there is a big glaring omission around child abuse in all of this. And it may not be the appropriate vehicle in which to do it, but is there something, whether through the inquiry or through even the legislation, where we could nearly create another process? I don't know.
There is an ongoing police process, is that what you mean?
No, I'm not sure.
Investigation?
I think a much bigger investigation that nearly, it's almost like it's been overlooked, but it still requires work. Is there something that, and I don't know, the answer could be no, that we can nearly future-proof work in relation to this?
I'll make a note of that, and we can, I think, take advice on that, if that's okay.
Nick, if I could just follow on from Brian, I think the problem is that we are fixated on the home and not the person. And in doing that, you are excluding, it seems from today, a lot of people. They may experience the same trauma, the same abuse.
Absolutely, 100%.
But if they don't fit into this magical box of wherever that's been, well, we can't take it forward. So there needs to be
another opportunity for them to be disregarded by another process.
Has to be a shift in focus to look at the abuse, look at the victim, not look at the police.
Chair, as well, the other thing that became clear today as well is the missing babies.
The dead babies.
The dead babies. The people that went out the back door and didn't know where they were going or where they were buried.
Potential mothers.
So I mean, there's a lot in this as well, and I think that there is, I suppose, in the public domain they talk about the Milltown Cemetery and that, but it's not confined to there. Every single cemetery have babies buried in the in the perimeter walls and the hedges, kind of the poorest parts of the unnamed, and it's kind of like it's a known unknown, if you know what I mean. So I think that's really important to kind of acknowledge that as well. I don't know what we can do about it, but it is when we're talking about truth recovery as part of this process, it's certainly an area that we need to.
Anya, please.
Just on Sinead's point, and I can't remember who initially raised it within the briefing. Could we maybe look at adding that on or into the terms of reference to expand on the existing? I know it's obviously detailed, but there's no mention of, because I googled it, I got it up in the PDF and then search keywords. There's no mention of burial sites, no mention of any of that within the context of this bill. So I think. And I don't know, Nick, you can give us your view on it, but by including it in the terms of reference, it widens that scope. And it could introduce that into the conversation.
Yeah, Chair, if you can, I think quite a lot of this actually falls within terms of reference and scope of the inquiry. And therefore, we will, as a committee and myself on the procedural side, we just need to get a view and some advice on the scope of the bill as it is now, although what it is dealing with is enormous. The actual scope of the bill is relatively narrow. It sets up an inquiry and it sets up a standardised payment scheme. And I think as a committee you need to be mindful of that. That's what this bill is there to do. What can happen is that the committee can make recommendations as to what the inquiry actually then does.
For me, it's the other way around, Nick. I'm just being honest.
No, go ahead.
Because the other way around for me is we're almost setting down the parameters for a future inquiry. So they must do this, they should do this, they may, they shall, or whatever. So that you're right, the two bits are there, but the inquiry needs to find out why does someone need redress payment? What is their pathway and whatever, and that's where I believe the scope of the inquiry, we should amend it.
Yes.
Because if we don't amend it, it will not be in the terms of reference. Because if it's not in black and white, it doesn't happen. So the under 5s or the over 18s that were missed out in the last two bits are going to be constantly missed out. Plus, if a judge, because it seems to be the chairperson is going to be a judicial appointment, But if the judge and the advisory panel decide,
Not minded.
we have too much work to do here, it's not going to happen. So the pathway is also include where the wains are buried. In my opinion, I think they need to. Like, as a society, I think we owe that. We owe that to those kids, to be honest.
We've heard it today where people have come into the room and said there's unmarked graves, X, Y and Z. There has to be something, a process to ensure that that's investigated.
And again, sorry.
No, thanks, Chair. It was just a quick thought to one of the comments made in relation to DNA and what actually exists out there in terms of information. And this is only almost nearly a related personal experience, that through the likes of Ancestry.com and all of that, actually, I know someone who was able to identify 8 half-sisters and brothers because of information that existed there. Now, in a way, I find that quite jarring. Because, but equally they were able to do that through a process, and I wonder, for some people they won't want to know that, and that's perfectly fine, but equally there's others who don't maybe recognise what could be found and what's out there, because it's a private organisation, but equally it holds an awful lot of data that could be somewhat related to this.
I think that we can drill down into that a bit more next week with the likes of WAVE and FASS, because I think that some of the funding is going towards these DNA testing, but certainly we can put that down as something as well.
And then the officials, when we were going to discuss when the officials are coming back in.
That'll happen tomorrow.
There's a point Carol was making, just in terms of, I think this is a very crucial point. I do not want the inquiry, when it happens in the future, to say, not us. We're not going to do this bit.
Short.
They cannot be allowed to fall short on this, and therefore we've got to do something that builds in a requirement on the committee. It has to be a must rather than anything else on them to investigate these other matters.
Yeah, there are a couple of others I have on my list of you. I think perhaps what it'd be worth doing is I'll write all of this up and then circulate it round, and we'll then get officials up, and before that we can go through this. More. Yeah, exactly. But just to get through these and get them on the record. Obviously, clause 31 in its entirety. There is obviously a huge amount of views on that, whether it be the posthumous date or the amounts of the standardised payment, or the description of who is eligible, and so obviously there is a lot of work around that the committee can interact with the officials from TEO on. And then just a couple of other things that I had down was, and again I'm not quite sure how we tackle this, but the narrative around the state and religious orders and other let's say stakeholders in the process working together, and this almost network that obviously at the minute the bill is quite silent on. It doesn't really discuss that, and again I think it comes back to your point, Stuart, that if we want the inquiry to not fall short, then perhaps more prescription around the terms of reference that the inquiry must undertake. And then the final one that I had was around foster care, and again something that I know has been talked about before in terms of the structure of the bill, but obviously it appears that there are gaps there as well. I think that is a huge issue separately as well, and could be its own thing. But I think perhaps, Chair, if I could just try and get all of this down, we'll talk to the department about getting officials up, share this with them. I'm sure they'll have seen all of this anyway, and then move it forward from there.
I have quite a number of queries myself that I'm grappling with, and I'm sure others have. So I wonder if we could put a deadline for Friday. If anybody has got any other queries, I think actually that isn't clear enough for me.
Send them through,
and then you can do a copy.
And then I'll do I can get something done which will get tabled for next week, and we could perhaps build in some time to discuss it then. So yes, please feel free to email me.
While it's my head, one of the things was the fathers. Obviously, it was a contentious issue.
Yes. Yes, that's a good point.
And Group 1 had mentioned about Clause 4 when they were given evidence, relevant persons.
Yes.
They said they would follow up an email. can we just make sure that we're looking out for that and maybe prompt them to get that?
Yeah, they'll...
just so
I won't need
clear.
to they'll get that to us. No, that's fine. Yes, fathers and that whole aspect of it was something that...
person.
Yeah, I think it falls in several different clauses, that, doesn't it? That's fine. Thanks, Chair.
So by Friday then, please.
And I'll get moving on that.
Okay, just going forward then. So the draft forward work programme, members, if you go to pages 1249 to 1252 of your pack, and I'm going to ask the Assistant Clerk to talk you through that.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously you have the forward work programme in your pack, so it'll take us up to Halloween recess, but just to highlight a couple of key areas around the bill. So as the Chair spoke to earlier, we've got 3 stakeholder events to hear from more individuals. So the first will be on the 15th of October in Dungannon at 10:30 a.m. and then in Wave Centre in Oonagh that afternoon at 1:30 p.m. And what we've done is we've booked a minibus for staff and members that will go from Parliament Buildings in the morning, take us to Dungannon, back on the bus, go to Oonagh, have our afternoon event and come back. So we'll send out details of that afterwards, but it's just to make members aware that that is available. And then we'll do another
15th of October.
Sorry, did I say November? 15th of October. And then on the 22nd of October, in the morning at 10 a.m, we're going to do another roundtable in the Europa Hotel in Belfast. So again, we'll send out all the invites after today.
Okay, thank you. So any other business, member?
Chair, apologies I missed the start of the meeting. Matters arising under Chair's letter regarding the media outlets. I just had a quick look through it, but having, Ballymena Guardian, not there. Ballymoney Chronicle, not there. Love Ballymena. Like there's an online presence now that they don't put in print. And that was me quickly looking at it and seeing them 3 in the localised area. So I think if we could have maybe a bit more of a look at that.
Yes, and Harry as well had mentioned another outlet that he had identified. Yes, I think again I would say to all members, if you want to have a look at that, and if there are outlets that you feel should be on that list that aren't on that list, it was in conjunction with our communication colleagues that list was brought up, and I think in total there's over 400 outlets that it's gone to. However, there is still time. We still have 2.5 weeks for the consultation. If you want to provide me with a list of ones that aren't on that, we'll make sure that it goes out to those as well. Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay, thank you. Any other business?
Ran and Harry's leaving.
Oh, yes. Oh.
Not officially until the motion is agreed.
Oh, yeah.
No, but I'm officially acknowledging. Just acknowledging your work. I think these are going to be missed.
Definitely.
Well, look, thanks for that. I'm sorry to be leaving in the middle of this important work, but reshuffles happen, so we'll still see you plenty about the place and in the chamber, and I wish the committee well in its ongoing work.
Yep. No, thank you very much, Chair, and I've enjoyed getting to know you all better. Some needed more patience than others, but it's been good.
I think we've
you've the
a
most
good work.
patience, Harry. Let's be honest.
And I wish you all well in your work, and I say my door's always open. Look forward to meeting you in the corridors and catching up. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the date and time next meeting is this time next week at 2 p.m. again back in room 21, and the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.